Chapter 1882. A rainbow light pierced through the sky. The dazzling and bright sword light slashed down with a domineering aura. Crack! The crisp sound of something breaking was heard. The barrier that the people of Black Sword Sect had just set up was shattered. The barrier did not even have the slightest effect on the Scarlet Cloud Sword. It had already turned into countless streams of light and scattered in all directions. Poof! Emmeline and the rest felt the backlash, and their faces turned pale. Immediately after, under their horrified gazes, the sword light accurately landed on another mountain peak. Boom! The sound was earth-shattering. A crack suddenly appeared on the steep and tall mountain peak. In an instant, a gale swept across and countless pinkish-white peach blossoms fell. Then, a faint blue flame surged out from the crack on the mountain peak. This scene caused everyone present to be dumbstruck. Because they were too shocked, everyone fell into a strange deathly silence for a moment. After a while someone muttered, "What's going on? Why is there a flame coming out from the bottom of the mountain?" The people of Black Sword Sect knew that there was a secret hidden under the Azure Peak. Hence, the mountain fire raged on. Otherwise, Mo Yun would not have asked them to keep watch over this place. He would rather pay a huge price than give up on this place. Almost everyone had silently agreed that there was some kind of opportunity hidden in the Azure Peak. But now, why was the mountain beside it also burning? Did this mean that there was something hidden under the mountain peak as well? Emmeline clenched his teeth in silence. "Go back immediately. Report this to the vice sect leader." At this moment, even he could not guarantee what would happen next. However, before they could move, they saw another group of people approaching. It was Nan Yuxing, who had followed Chu Luyue all the way here. The scarlet gold celestial phoenix was extremely fast. Even though Nan Yuxing had already exerted all his strength, he still could not catch up with it. Moreover, the distance between the two of them had widened again. This was also why he had only rushed over after Chu Luyue had been here for a while. However, at this moment, Nan Yuxing was also confused by the scene before him. A trace of shock flashed across Nan Yuxing's face when he saw the bursting flames. "If I didn't see wrongly, those flames seemed to be caused by Chu Luyue?" She merely raised her hand, and flames began to burn on the mountain peak. "This flame is clearly unusual. How did Chu Luyue do this?" Nan Yuxing had just arrived at the Peach Blossom Dock today. Therefore, he did not know what had happened to Lan Qingfeng a few days ago. "You are." Emmeline noticed Nan Yuxing and instantly became alert. "Venerable God." Nan Yuxing coldly glanced at him. His gaze paused for a moment on the embroidered pattern of two swords circling the moon on their left chest. Chu Luyue's thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly, but she still didn't open her eyes. At this moment, all her attention was placed on the flame. There should be. She had clearly sensed that under this mountain peak. Go to hell. Nan Yuxing had already flown in front of Chu Luyue. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth gathered crazily towards his long saber. In the next moment, he held the saber with both hands and slashed out. Wherever the saber light passed, the void began to collapse rapidly. Violent spatial fluctuations began to spread out with the two of them as the center. At the same time, a dangerous aura surged towards them. The expressions of Emmeline and the rest changed. Quick retreat. The void began to collapse in all directions. At this moment, Nan Yuxing didn't realize what was happening. In his eyes, there was only Chu Luyue. His only thought was to kill her on the spot. Dumpling flew up. She flapped her wings. Whoosh! A burning reddish gold fire suddenly flew out and rapidly formed a gigantic barrier in front of Chu Luyue. Boom! The two forces collided violently. Nan Yuxing had used all his strength this time. After a short stalemate, cracks began to appear on the barrier. At the same time, countless spatial turbulences began to surge out from the collapsing void, crushing the barrier to pieces. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1883. This scene finally made Nan Yuxing realize that the situation was not right. He quickly turned his eyes and took a closer look. In a short period of time, several black spatial rifts had appeared in all directions. At this moment, these spatial rifts were slowly intertwining and merging with each other, and the tyrannical turbulence that was constantly gushing out also began to fight fiercely. Countless chaotic energies collided with each other, causing the situation to become even worse. No, Nan Yuxing frowned. He had indeed not held back when he attacked just now. However, even if it was an all-out attack from a venerable god expert, it should not have caused such a situation. Moreover, he had just broken through as a venerable god. This situation was indeed a little strange. However, this thought only flashed through his mind for a moment before it was quickly drowned out by hatred. Right now, he only wanted to kill Chu Luyue and take revenge for Nanyi. As for the rest, it would not be too late to deal with them after all these things were over. Nan Yuxing was a very proud person. The things that had happened during this period of time had caused him a great deal of agitation. Therefore, his emotions were still in a very extreme state at this moment. If he could calm down now and take a closer look at the situation around him, he would realize that a terrifying danger was quietly approaching. Unfortunately, at this moment, nothing could enter his eyes, and nothing could enter his ears. He did not even take Mo Lin and the other's strange retreat to heart. He only wanted to kill Chu Luyue. After the barrier that Dumpling had set up shattered, the terrifying blade light went straight for Chu Luyue's face. The strands of hair on her forehead had been swept up by the wind. Dumpling was on guard, and there seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. Just as she was about to attack again, she heard Chu Luyue's voice from behind her. Found it. Dumpling turned around. Chu Luyue suddenly opened her eyes. She raised her hand, and a black shield suddenly appeared in front of her. Nan Yuxing's heart skipped a beat. Previously, he had seen how powerful Chu Luyue's shield was. He did not know if his attack after breaking through as a venerable god would be able to break through the black shield. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. He saw that the black shield seemed to be different from before. He took a closer look and realized that a few pieces of rust had been peeled off from the surface of the metal. The shield, which was originally flat, became bumpy in an instant. It looked a little shabby. Nan Yuxing almost laughed out loud. Shangguanyu, I haven't seen you for a while, and this treasure of yours has already been broken. Or is it that you don't have any other suitable yuan instruments on you? Chu Luyue clenched the black shield in his hand and looked up. Their eyes met. Nan Yuxing could clearly see the cunning glint in that pair of clear, black jade-like eyes. This made his heart sink. Chu Luyue's red lips curved slightly. To deal with you, this is enough. Just as she finished speaking, a stream of light suddenly flew out from the flames in front of her and headed straight for the shield. Almost at the same time, a piece of rust peeled off from the shield. That stream of light quickly replaced it. Nan Yuxing was standing closest to it, so he did not have time to see what it was. When he finally reacted, he saw that the black shield seemed to be glowing a few times and then quickly dimmed. That was, for some reason he suddenly felt uneasy. Chu Luyue had already flown up and blocked the attack with the shield in front of her. Dumpling. Hearing the call, Dumpling obediently flapped its wings and flew behind her. One man and one beast were hiding behind the black shield. Nan Yuxing forced a mocking smile. It's just a pile of scrap. Rumble. Before he could finish his sentence, the power of the two sides collided violently. An earth-shattering explosion. Nan Yuxing even felt that his ears were ringing. Even his heart became numb. But in the next moment, an even more shocking scene happened. After the sword light collided with the black shield, it did not stop at all and disappeared with a loud bang. In an instant, light scattered in all directions. The strong backlash caused Nan Yuxing's chest to shake, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Puff! His face instantly turned pale. He staggered back half a step. Although it was only half a step, it was a great humiliation to Nan Yuxing. He actually lost. He actually lost to a high god with the power of a god. He looked up in shock and anger, and looked at the black shield in Chu Luyue's hand again. What kind of yuan instrument was this? How could it block his attack so easily? Molin and the others, who were watching from afar, were also deeply shocked. For a long time they were speechless. Even a high god like Nan Yuxing would end up like this. If it were them, they would probably end up even more miserable. Lord Molin, just now something seemed to have flown out from the fire. After a while, someone finally spoke up. His voice was trembling. Mullen was suddenly energized. That's right. Just now, something had indeed flown out from the fire and landed on her shield. What was that? Before they could figure it out, Chu Luiyue had already turned around and headed toward the third mountain. Her figure was light and agile, and her red dress fluttered in the wind. From afar, she looked like a ball of crimson flame, joyfully moving through the dense forest. Then she raised her sword again. Mullen suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened in shock. She's going to split the mountain. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1884. Chu Luiyue swung her sword a second time without any hesitation. The sword chimed and shook the heavens and the earth. The terrifying sword energy tore the sky apart and slashed down. Rumble. Following a loud crash, the mountain next to it was slashed apart once again. The originally steep and precipitous mountain peak was neatly cut open from the top of the mountain, leaving behind a huge crack. Boom! Then, another ball of blue flames burst out from the crack and soared into the sky. Nan Yuxing's pupil shrank. He had a bad feeling. In the distance, Mo Lin and the others were even more shocked. How could this be? How could this be? Wasn't it said that only the bottom of Langfeng Peak had amazing opportunities? But now, why were there flames bursting out from the bottom of the surrounding mountains? Chu Luiyue had only swung her sword twice, but she had already split open 2 mountains and ignited 2 balls of flames. Every swing of her sword was accurate. Mo Lin's heart was filled with fear. He had already vaguely realized that Chu Luiyue had indeed come prepared. Or rather, she had done it on purpose. What was she going to do? Split open all the mountains and ignite all the flames below? Mo Lin's mind was in a mess when he thought of the scene where something flew onto her shield from the flames. He stared at the figure and felt that it was familiar. Suddenly he opened his eyes wide. Could it be that she was the one who followed Sanson to Langfeng Peak that day? Otherwise, how could she ignite the flames on Langfeng Peak so easily? There were even other things below the mountains. It must be her. It must be her. At this moment, Mo Lin finally understood. From the beginning to the end, these flames were closely related to Chu Luiyue. If it's really as I thought, then the thing buried under Lan Qingfeng would have long been taken by Chu Luiyue as her own. Mo Lin broke out in cold sweat when this thought appeared in his mind. You guys stay here and guard. I'll personally invite the vice faction leader. As he spoke, he was about to turn around when he suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air from afar. Everyone looked over and was immediately shocked, because it was a group of people. To be more precise, it was a chaotic battle between several parties. Mo Yin was also among them. Mo Lin was just about to step forward when he suddenly realized that those people who were fighting were rather unfamiliar, but their strengths were extremely formidable. Third boss is here too, someone exclaimed. Mo Lin looked over and frowned. Not only was Sanson here, but she was also standing opposite Mo Lin. At this moment, she was fighting with full vigor. From the looks of it, they seemed to be stopping Mo Yun's group from coming over. On the other side, there seemed to be an unfamiliar god expert working together with Mo Yun. The scene was extremely chaotic. Mullen and the others were completely dumbfounded. What was going on? They had only been guarding this place for 2 days. How could so many things have happened? Whoosh! Rong Xiu waved his sleeves, and a faint golden barrier blocked Mo Yun and the others outside. Sensing the astonishing pressure surging from above, Mo Yun was shocked and angry. This Rong Xiu was too difficult to deal with. And that Sin Yi, his strength was also far beyond their imagination. Mo Yun's gaze turned, looking past Rong Xiu and the others to Lan Qifeng, who was behind them. His heart sank the moment he saw what was in front of him. The fire on Lan Qifeng had indeed started burning. The key point was that other than Lan Qifeng, there were also blue flames burning crazily on the 2 mountains beside it. From the looks of it, it was obvious that someone had forcefully split open the mountain rocks and drawn it out from below. Mo Yun's gaze finally landed on the slender figure standing on the mountain peak. She stood against the wind, holding a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right hand. Her eyes were tightly shut, and no one knew what she was doing. In front of her, a deep ravine extended, and the blazing flames were jumping around like fairies. At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through Imo Yun's mind. However, before he could think clearly, he saw something suddenly flying out from the flames, heading straight for Chu Luiyue. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes and raised the black shield in her hand. Buzz! That ray of light landed on the shield, and there was a ripple of light. However, in just an instant, that ray of light quickly disappeared. It was as if it had been swallowed by the black shield, but it was as if nothing had happened. How could it be that nothing had happened? Imo Yun's heart felt as if it was being squeezed by something. He was extremely smart. Based on what he had seen so far, it was enough to explain a lot of things. That day, the enchantment on Lan Qingfeng suddenly dissipated, and the flames gradually extinguished. It must be because of her. Then the thing below, probably. However, according to the information that he had gathered, it was clearly only the situation below Lan Qingfeng. Now, even the surrounding mountains where a huge amount of information rushed in, causing Imo Yun's mind to go blank. At this moment, Chu Luiyue looked down at the shield in her hand. As expected, after the rust peeled off, it became heavier. The two hidden powers that were summoned by splitting open the two mountains had all merged into the black shield. The originally flat shield became more and more uneven. Complicated and mysterious patterns could be vaguely seen in the shallow depression. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked up. If she wanted the rust on the black shield to be completely peeled off, it would be an extremely torturous and long process. As the secret text on it gradually appeared, its weight and pressure continued to increase. She could still carry it now, but if this continued, she was not sure how long she could hold on. She pursed her lips and continued to head to the next mountain. Seeing Chu Luiyue running to the next mountain, Imo Yun's heart suddenly surged with a strong sense of uneasiness. He could almost predict what Chu Luiyue was going to do. The anger in his heart was surging, and it was about to rush out of his chest. Force surged in Imo Yun's palm, and then he quickly slammed his palm forward. Lingyun palm. A huge greenish-black palm print condensed in the void. Then, it began to quickly head toward the enchantment set up by Rongxiao. The power of both sides began to silently kill, entangle and devour. Ripples appeared on the surface of the barrier, but it did not shatter. It was extremely flexible. On the contrary, it was that palm print of Imo Yun that started to gradually weaken in the midst of the frenzied battle. Imo Yun was burning with anxiety as he watched. He was indeed not confident that he could win against Rongxiao in a head-on battle, but time was of the essence. If he continued to let Chu Luiyue go on like this, the consequences would be unimaginable. Rongxiao, do you know what she's doing? If the entire peach blossom dock is destroyed, Imo Yun shouted at the top of his lungs, and his face was ashen. Rongxiao raised his eyebrows slightly. As long as she wants to, let her be. It's just a peach blossom dock. If it's destroyed, I will take responsibility. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1885. His handsome face was calm and composed, as if he didn't take this matter to heart at all. Her eyes were filled with elegance, and one could see that she was indulging and doting on that person. It was as though even if she turned everything upside down, he would still spoil her. Imo Yun was so angry that he could not speak, his body trembling. These two people were too presumptuous. Rongxiao, don't blame me for not reminding you. This is Peach Blossom Dock. If she did anything out of line, the entire Peach Blossom Dock would be buried with her. The surrounding void had already started to collapse uncontrollably. It was not that Imo Yun had not seen such a situation before, but he had never experienced such a serious situation before. Rongxiao's brows raised slightly. I really can't tell that vice sect leader Imo actually has such a heart. In these 2 years, the number of people who died under your Ink Sword sect is not small, right? If vice sect leader Imo really cares about the world, and cares about everyone, why not harm fewer people? I think it will be more effective this way. Imo Yun was speechless by Rongxiao's words. Of course, he did not care about the life and death of the people in Peach Blossom Dock. He was only worried that Chu Luiyue would monopolize the things that they had been searching for so long. But of course, such a reason could not be said. Mo Yun could only be anxious. At the side, Luo Yan's expression was solemn as his mind raced. There was obviously another reason why Mo Yun was so worried. Could it be the flames on the mountain? He looked forward, and through the enchantment, he could only see Nan Yuxing slightly hunched back. It seemed that he was injured. Luo Yan could not help but frown. Nan Yuxing was already a god expert. How could he not be able to defeat Chu Luiyue, who was a high god? Could it be that in this short period of time, Chu Luiyue's strength had increased again? Just as both sides were in a deadlock, another group of people rushed over from behind. This aura was somewhat familiar. Luo Yan's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly turned back to look, and was immediately delighted. The few people who had chased over were the Nan family, who came with them. Behind them, there were also some people from the Black Sword sect. However, Luo Yan soon discovered that the number of people was wrong. Originally, there were 8 elders present. However, only 4 of them had come. Luo Yan's heart was filled with a strong sense of unease. He immediately stepped forward. Only when he got closer did he see that the bodies of these people were stained with messy bloodstains. It seemed like they had gone through a fierce battle. Why are there only 4 of you? Where are the rest? Luo Yan asked anxiously. The elders looked at each other with dejected expressions. Those people are all. Luo Yan's heart turned cold. The 4 who were still alive were all eminent gods. Even they were unable to save him. He couldn't help but say, "How could this be? Judging from their strength, they are definitely not your match." The them he was referring to was naturally Sanson and the others. Previously, when he and Mo Yun chased after them, Rong Xiao and Sini quickly caught up. As for the rest, they only came after a period of time. At that time, he thought that they had used some method to temporarily stop the people from the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. Who would have thought that it would take so many people's lives? One of the elders spoke with difficulty. Luo Yan, you don't know. The people from the Yu family have extremely powerful formations. If they were to fight individually, the people from the Yu family were indeed no match for several eminent gods. However, who knew that this group of people had already thought of a strategy from the beginning? When Rong Xiao and the others left, they didn't say anything and immediately set up a profound formation. That formation was very strange. They worked together with the people from the Black Sword sect to break it with great difficulty. However, they also paid a great price. The same went for the Black Sword sect. In fact, because they didn't have many eminent gods, their casualties were even more serious. In short, to them, it was indeed a bloody battle. However, the most hateful thing was that they were trapped in that formation. Sanson and the others who set up the formation only handed it over to the servants of the Yu family, and then left directly. This was also why Sanson and the others had rushed over so much earlier than them. In other words, Sanson and the others had killed half of them without any effort. After Luo Yan heard this, he was shocked and angry. At the same time, there was a trace of uncontrollable deep fear. He couldn't help but turn back. At this moment, Sanson and the others were standing beside Sini, looking obedient. Seeing the people who chased after them, Sanson couldn't help but click her tongue. Eminent gods are indeed different. They actually caught up so quickly? This sentence almost angered Luo Yan and the others half to death. Fast? How is it fast? Under the circumstances where so many people had died, they barely managed to rush out of the formation and catch up here. It could be said that it wasn't painful. Sanson's words were no different from sprinkling salt on their wounds. Luo Yan's chest rose and fell violently. However, at the same time, countless thoughts were surging in his heart. Looking at these people, they didn't even put them eminent gods in their eyes. Luo Yan wanted to curse, but the thick smell of blood around the people around him made it hard for him to breathe. Didn't they say that these people came from outside the Divine Ruins world? How could they be so powerful? Luo Yan couldn't figure it out. There was no need to talk about Rong Xiao. After all, he was an eminent god, and was born as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. His bloodline talent was already famous for being powerful. But what about Chu Luiyue? Wasn't she just an eminent god? And these followers of hers, They actually possessed strength that far exceeded their own cultivation realm. Why were the people related to her so abnormal? On the other side, Imoyun didn't care so much. Seeing that the people from Black Sword Sect had caught up, he ordered without hesitation. Everyone from Black Sword Sect, listen up. Set up the formation. Yes. With Imoyun's order, no one dared to disobey, and immediately took action. There were about a dozen people from Black Sword Sect chasing after them. But in Imoyun's eyes, it was still not enough. Chu Luyue could directly split the mountain and draw out the blue flames from the bottom of the mountain. This proved that her strength was definitely more shocking than the rumors. Imoyun! Imoyun looked up and shouted sternly. Imoyun's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly replied. Yes. Without Imoyun's instructions, he knew what to do. Everyone follow. Imoyun raised his hand and immediately led the people behind him to charge towards Imoyun and the others. Rongxiu's barrier blocked them. Looking at the barrier that was suffused with a faint golden color, a trace of hesitation flashed across Imoyun's face, but it disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, he directly drew his sword and drew a line on his palm. Chi. Blood splattered. Following that, a surge of force, mixed with blood, crazily surged out. Blood sacrifice array. Almost at the same time, the people behind him did the same. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1886. The thick stench of blood spread through the air. Several forces converged. Then the sky suddenly darkened. Countless dark clouds converged from all directions. The sky, which was originally considered clear, suddenly turned gloomy. Strong winds blew, howling incessantly. Rumble. A huge sound exploded from behind the layers of clouds. Tianlei, like a silver snake, was faintly discernible as it slithered quickly. Rongxiu raised his head to take a look, his phoenix eyes narrowing slightly. To be able to trigger Tianlei in such a short time, one could see how powerful it was. 13 suddenly thought of something, his eyes widening as he turned to look at Xin Yi. Big brother, wasn't this aura almost exactly the same as the one he felt on the day of the soul-gazing tribulation? Although he was busy breaking through back then, he still paid attention to the situation around him. On that day, aside from the numerous bolts of lightning that he had attracted, the people from the Black Sword Sect had also attracted many bolts of lightning, causing a huge commotion. He vaguely felt that the Tianlei summoned by the two sides was somewhat different, but he didn't have time to distinguish what exactly was different. But now that he saw the scene again, he immediately recognized it. This was exactly the same as that day. A cold glint flashed across Xin Yi's indifferent and narrow eyes. He was also present that day, and as a bystander, he saw it even more clearly. He glanced at 13 and shook his head lightly, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Ink Sword Sect wanted to trigger Tianlei to attack Master. This killing intent was too strong, to the point that they didn't even bother to conceal it and directly attacked. At this moment, Imoyun indeed couldn't care less. In the past 2 years, the Black Sword Sect had held a test every month. Every time, they would specially choose a secluded place and ensure that no one was watching before they began. Now, in broad daylight, directly activating the blood sacrifice formation in front of so many pairs of eyes would definitely attract a lot of attention. But there was no other way. Seeing that Chu Luyue was still planning to continue splitting the mountain, Imoyun didn't dare to guarantee how the situation would develop if he allowed her to continue like this. So now he could only gamble. As long as Chu Luyue was dealt with, the rest could be dealt with slowly. Thinking of this, Imoyun did not hesitate to cut open his left palm. Blood flew out. A terrifying force surged out from his body. The people from the Ink Sword Sect following behind him naturally attacked as well. On both sides of the golden barrier, countless blood-colored lights converged and intersected to form strange patterns. It was the image of the Black Sword Sect's twin swords circling the moon. From afar, it looked like Rongxiu's barrier had split the gigantic blood-colored pattern into two from the middle. The pincer attack from both sides caused the barrier to shake even more violently. Rumble. Finally, the first Tianlei came crashing down. Almost at the same time, the violently vibrating golden barrier suddenly shattered. Bang! For a moment, light scattered in all directions. Violent energy surged out in all directions. The blood-red patterns on both sides began to converge towards the center. At this moment, Chu Luiyue, who had just arrived at another mountain peak, also noticed the commotion. She raised her head and frowned slightly. A trace of impatience flashed across her eyes. There's really no end to this. Did the people from the Ink Sword sect finally react and intend to shed all pretense of cordiality with her? Shangguanyu, now everyone wants your life. I'd like to see how long you can be so arrogant. Nan Yuxing raised his head and looked. When he realized that the reason why the Ink Sword sect had set up such a huge formation was to kill Chu Luiyue, he could not help but feel relieved. Chu Luiyue glanced at him. A loser like you still has the mood to be so arrogant? If I were you, I'd probably die of shame after losing to a cultivator who's one level lower than me. Nan Yuxing's face immediately turned red. Also, your Yuan meridian was severed previously. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for you to fully recover. But not only did you fully recover in such a short period of time, you even broke through to become a god. Nan Yuxing, have you never thought about how strange this situation is? Chu Liyue's question sounded like a joke to Nan Yuxing. I was able to recover because I'm lucky, and I have the help of an expert. Of course, a lowly person like you has no right to meet such an expert. You've never even heard of such an expert. Chu Luiyue curled the corner of her mouth. She did not take his derogatory words to heart. Indeed, I've never seen such an expert. But, as a celestial physician, I've heard of a method that can quickly turn a crippled person into a genius. Are you interested in hearing it? Originally, Nan Yuxing did not want to waste his breath on Chu Luiyue. However, the mysterious smile on her face made his heart tremble for some reason. Who wants to listen to your nonsense? He reprimanded coldly. Chu Luiyue was not bothered by his attitude. She raised her eyebrows and suddenly said, Nan Yuxing, I won't hide it from you. From the moment we exchanged blows, I felt that the aura on your body was very familiar. Nan Yuxing sneered. You and I have already met in the Divine Ruins world. Isn't it normal for you to feel familiar with my aura? Chu Luiyue smiled. Of course. I'm not talking about your aura when I say familiar. Nan Yuxing's heart skipped a beat. Chu Luiyue continued to ask. Nan Yuxing, don't you feel it at all? Your Yuan meridian is obviously very different from the Yuan meridian you used to have. I don't believe that you can't even notice this. Nan Yuxing's legs suddenly went soft. He took a step back uncontrollably. His face turned deathly pale. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Don't try to mislead me with your lies. Shangguanyu, am I trying to mislead you with my lies? Or are you unwilling to face reality? I'm afraid no one knows better than you, right? Chu Luiyue interrupted him. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly pierced into his heart. If I remember correctly, although Nanny's tongue was cut off, the Yuan meridian in her body is still intact. If you take it out and put it into another person's body, it won't be a waste. With every word Chu Luiyue said, Nan Yuxing's face turned paler. His lips trembled as he muttered to deny it. But in his heart, countless guesses surged uncontrollably. It wasn't that he didn't think about how he recovered his Yuan meridian, but his father only said that he asked an expert for help, so he firmly believed it. In fact, did he really not have any doubts in his heart? Of course he did. But that guess was too terrifying. He didn't dare to think that way at all. He only talked about how he wanted to take revenge for Nan Yi, as if this was the only way to calm his restless heart a little. At this moment, Chu Liyue's words finally unveiled the last layer of veil. Nan Yuxing, is your younger sister's Yuan meridian convenient for you? Translator, Noodletown Translations Editor, Noodletown Translations. Chapter 1887. Chu Liyue's casual words were like a poison arrow that pierced into Nan Yuxing's heart. He staggered a few steps back, and almost lost his balance. You're spouting nonsense, he reflexively shouted in a stern voice. What do you know? You don't know anything. What right do you have to spout nonsense? Because of his agitation, his voice was exceptionally hoarse and sharp. He stared at Chu Luiyue with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. There seemed to be flames burning in his eyes. It looked like he couldn't wait to kill Chu Luiyue on the spot and chew on his flesh and bones. Chu Luiyue raised the corner of his lips. However, there wasn't a hint of a smile on his face. There was only coldness in his eyes. I'm just asking you a question. I didn't say anything. If it's fake, why are you so agitated? Nan Yuxing, who killed your biological sister Nanyi? Why don't you ask yourself or ask your good father? Nan Yuxing was about to break down. He wanted to ignore Chu Luiyue's words. However, those words seemed to have gone crazy and kept reverberating in his mind. Countless questions surged in his mind at this moment. It wasn't that he didn't have doubts. However, how could he dare to ask? He didn't even dare to think about how he had recovered his Yuan meridian. Boom! Just as Nan Yuxing was in a daze, a blue flame suddenly transformed into a long whip under his body. It rushed up and tightly bound him. Nan Yuxing was shocked and subconsciously tried to break free. However, the flame suddenly exploded before he could break free. Boom! Boom! Instantly, countless sparks flew in all directions. Terrifying and scorching energy continuously bombarded Nan Yuxing's body. His figure was instantly surrounded by the exploding flames. First young master. Luo Yan and the others were shocked when they saw this scene. As they were still some distance away, they couldn't hear what Chu Luiyue and Nan Yuxing said. In their opinion, the two of them had only said a few words before Chu Luiyue attacked. This was considered a sneak attack. However, Nan Yuxing was a god. Logically speaking, he should have been able to dodge it. What happened to him just now? Quick! Save first young master. At the same time, he moved and rushed in Nan Yuxing's direction. The four elders behind him quickly followed behind him. However, before they could arrive, a bolt of lightning flashed in the sky and struck down. Its target was Chu Luiyue. Under the influence of Tianlei's power, Luo Yan and the others. When he saw the Tianlei's landing spot, he had a look of Nan Yuxing was just a short distance away from Chu Luiyue, so he would definitely suffer a huge impact if the lightning struck him. He suddenly turned his head and shouted at Mo Yun, Assistant Sect Leader Mo. My Nan family's young master is still there. How can you act so rashly? If such a bolt of heavenly thunder was added to the mix, the consequences would be unthinkable. When Mo Yun heard that, he frowned coldly. We want to kill Sheng Guanyu. He insisted on going there. Who can he blame? Since he knew that he didn't have the ability, he should have left. Nan Yuxing had been chasing after Chu Luiyue for so long. Not only did he fail to stop her, he even allowed her to split the mountains. Mo Yun was very unhappy about this. He really looked down on this so-called young master of the Nan family. She looks like a god, but her actual combat strength can't even compare to Chu Luiyue, who is a high god. If he stayed there, he would only be a hindrance to everyone. Mo Yun was also in an extremely sensitive state. Naturally, he was not polite with his words. In fact, even if Nan Yuxing died because of this, he wouldn't care at all. When he said this, the faces of the elders of the Nan family all changed. Everyone agreed to form an alliance. How could you say something like this? What's the point of forming an alliance? Nan Yuxing was the first young master of the Nan family, and the only successor of Nan Yifan. Previously, he was seriously injured and was almost crippled. Nan Yifan had spent a lot of effort to help him recover and break through to the god realm. If he died here today, Luo Yan and the rest wouldn't be able to explain themselves. Mo Yun, don't go overboard. We also want to kill Sheng Guanyu. But if you continue to act like this, don't blame us for being impolite. Luo Yan also didn't want to fight with Mo Yun at this time. But the other party was really too much. Facing Luo Yan's threat, Mo Yun responded with a cold smile. He didn't even look over. In fact, when he was about to use the blood sacrifice array, he had already decided to bury everyone here together with him. What was a mere Nan Yuxing to him? This battle was very laughable in the eyes of Sanson and the rest. Today has really broadened my horizons. A second ago, they said that they wanted to work together. The next moment, they turned against each other and became enemies. How exciting! Wu Yao sighed from the bottom of his heart. Before they could make a move, Majin sect and Nan family had already stood up. It was simply laughable. Sansan waved her hand disapprovingly. It's normal operation. Don't worry about it. These two families didn't have any good intentions. It was expected that things would turn out like this. Big brother, should we make a move? He looked at Sini. Sini pondered for a moment and looked at Rong Xiao. Does Her Highness think? Rong Xiao looked up and glanced at Chu Luyue. His thin lips curved slightly. No hurry. She hasn't played enough. Let's wait a little longer, and let her play to her heart's content. It won't be too late to make a move then. Digression. I'm going out today and I'm not sure when I'll be back. So I'll make up for it tomorrow. Speaking of which, I swore that I wouldn't write on New Year's Eve, but it seems like I won't be able to do it. The list of activities will be posted in the comment section tonight. The prizes will be distributed after the new year. I'll wear a mask when I go out. Everyone, please be careful and have a safe and healthy new year. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1888. Sini nodded. When the rest of the people heard this, they looked at each other and couldn't help but look at their own master. At this moment, she had already raised her sword again. Boom! Another dark blue flame gushed out from under the cracked mountain rocks. More and more flames appeared. Under the gloomy sky, they looked like balls of ghostly fire burning faintly, dyeing the dark and thick clouds with a faint blue color. The slender figure was extremely agile, shuttling through the undulating mountain range like a fairy. The flames seemed to be extremely obedient to her will as they danced. Master is really amazing. Yujio couldn't help but praise. Who knows how many people Majin sect has sacrificed just for that azure peak. However, in front of Master, he didn't even put them in his eyes. From what I see, Master is really going to flip the entire Peach Blossom dock over. Master is naturally extraordinary when he makes a move. Wu Yao rubbed his chin and looked at the Tianlei that was still gathering in the sky. At first, he was still a little worried, but seeing that his big brother and the others didn't seem to care, his heart was basically settled. Shifeng looked at them, and then at the collapsing void. He rubbed his hands and muttered in a low voice. It's said that the void in Peach Blossom Dock is chaotic. It seems like it's true. It was just a fierce battle, but it had already caused the spatial energy here to become chaotic. Countless turbulent flows flowed out recklessly. If the situation continued to worsen, it wouldn't be good. From the corner of his eye, Shifeng saw that 13's expression was very calm. He couldn't help but nudge him with his elbow and whisper, 13, aren't you worried? Worried about what? 13 looked at him in surprise. Shifeng pursed his lips. This void, I'm afraid it's going to completely shatter. I know. 13 nodded calmly. Although his realm wasn't as high as his big brother and the others, he had followed them for many years and seen and heard a lot. Naturally, his vision was different. He also knew what this meant. But, isn't Master and Big Brother here? 13 rolled his eyes and coughed. And, His Highness is also quite powerful. With so many people around, he felt that there was nothing to worry about. If you really don't have the confidence, why are you still staying here? According to Master's temperament, she wouldn't stay in an unsafe place for long. Shifeng was taken aback. Then he thought about it carefully and felt that it made sense. That's true. No matter what, his master had been through hundreds of battles. It was impossible for him to not know the seriousness of the situation. In this situation, she still chose to stay here. This only proved that there was something more important to her here. Rumble. Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. He viciously hacked at Chu Luyue. Almost at the same time, Chu Luyue jumped onto Dumpling's back. Whoosh! Dumpling spread its wings and flew quickly to the next mountain peak. Huge flames burst out from the mountaintop behind them. From afar, it was as if a phoenix had been reborn from blood. Damn it! Mo Yin was furious. They had already used the blood sacrifice array without caring about anything. But they still couldn't do anything to Chu Luyue. That crimson gold heavenly phoenix's speed was too fast. Continue, Mo Yin ordered. His voice was hoarse and almost hysterical. Chu Luyue had escaped from his hands time and time again. which had already made him extremely angry. He quickly circulated the force in his body and activated the blood sacrifice array. That huge blood-colored totem was like a sea of blood that stretched across the sky. The thick smell of blood quickly spread between heaven and earth. It was almost suffocating. The surging killing intent wantonly surged. Rumble. Low and heavy thunder rolled down from the clouds. It heavily smashed into everyone's ears. It shook everyone's heart. Several silver snake-like tianlei quickly gathered in the sky and immediately fell one after another. Rumble. A loud sound reverberated throughout the area. The wind was raging. The space was distorted even more. Chu Liyue quickly turned around to take a look. The pitch-black ink-like pressure reflected the dazzling fire. She gently patted Dumpling's head. Tuanzi got the hint and stopped quickly. At this moment, they had stopped at the top of a mountain. Those tianlei arrived in an instant. The distance between the two sides was rapidly shortened. Chu Liyue raised her head slightly and moved her wrists. However, her feet didn't move. She only looked up at the tianlei. Her black hair was already swept up by the wind, dancing in the air. Seeing this scene, almost everyone was shocked. Mo Yin frowned and couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. Is she crazy? At this time, it was too late to escape, but she actually stopped just like that. Was she scared silly? Or did she know that she couldn't escape, so she simply gave up? But no matter what the situation was, this action was no different from courting death. Mo Yin was stunned at first, then he sneered. Looks like she's really tired of living. Previously, he had thought that Chu Liyue would more or less try to avoid it. With the strength she had displayed previously, coupled with the help of Rong Xiu and the others, she might be able to hold on for a while. But now that she didn't want to live anymore, she couldn't blame others. Thinking of this, Mo Yin glanced at Rong Xiu and the others. A trace of suspicion flashed in his cold eyes. Chu Liyue was Rong Xiu's princess consort, and it was rumored that he doted on this princess consort a lot. In order to marry her smoothly, he didn't even hesitate to offend the Yuntian Tower's patriarch and the other respected elders. Logically speaking, he should be very worried when he saw Chu Liyue in danger. But at this moment he didn't seem to be worried. And Sun Yi and the others beside him. She actually followed him and stood there without doing anything, not moving at all. Could it be that they had all become idiots as well? But such doubts and confusion only flashed through Mo Yin's mind. The deafening sound of the heavenly lightning striking down quickly snatched away his attention. He turned his head and focused his attention on Chu Liyue again. An incomparably bright and imposing tianlei fell with a loud bang. It accurately landed on the mountain where Chu Liyue was. Crack! A huge crack appeared on the mountain. More than half of the mountain peak shook violently. At the same time, another cluster of blue flames quickly surged out from within. Lightning and fire merged, and the power of both sides fought fiercely. The figure that always stood as straight as a pine tree was also swallowed at this moment. The corners of Mo Yin's mouth lifted into a cold smile. The tianlei triggered by the blood sacrifice array was extremely powerful. Even a venerable god expert had to be careful when dealing with it, let alone a venerable god like Chu Liyue. This time, she was definitely going to die. However, in the next moment, a figure suddenly rushed out from the flames. It went straight to the sky. Mo Yin's smile finally froze on his face. Digression insomnia. Increasing the dosage of melatonin didn't have any effect. He barely fell asleep at around 4 in the morning and woke up at 7 in the morning. At this moment, he couldn't open his eyes, and his mind was in a mess. I can't update on time today. I will try my best to finish the 6 chapters before 8 in the evening. Everyone, read it together later. Most importantly, I wish everyone a happy New Year's Eve. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1889. That dark blue fire surrounded Chu Liyue's body. Not only did it not cause her any harm, but it even blocked most of the lightning's strength for her. She rushed out of the place where the flames intertwined without any harm. Then, she quickly flew forward with Dumpling. Her speed was extremely fast. The violent energy surging around her couldn't even slow her down in the slightest. Mo Yin's expression was dull, as if he had been slapped a few times. His face was burning with pain. The flames on the mountain peak were so bright that it hurt their eyes, and they could not look at it directly. Plus, Mo Yin was in a state of extreme shock, so he did not see that the black shield in Chu Liyue's hand flashed past. At this moment his mind was completely blank. It was fine that the Tianlei did not hit Chu Liyue at the beginning, but that strike just now had truly struck her from the top of her head. Why was Chu Liyue still safe and sound? It was the flame. It was the flame. A white light suddenly flashed across Mo Yin's mind. He suddenly realized Chu Liyue had indeed controlled the strange blue flames at the foot of the mountain. The thing buried below was definitely already in her hands. Mo Yin was extremely angry and resentful. They had stayed here for almost 2 years, and finally confirmed that there was something hidden under Lan Qingfeng. In the end, before they could do anything, Chu Liyue beat them to it. More importantly, when she made her move, they knew that not only Lan Qingfeng, but the surrounding mountains were also inextricably linked to that thing. After suffering for so long, they did not know how many casualties they had paid. In the end, Chu Liyue, who had just arrived at Peach Blossom Cove, beat them to it. How could Mo Yin take this lying down? He suddenly bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood sacrifice array in the sky suddenly surged violently again. A thick black mist was faintly discernible within, but it only appeared for a moment and disappeared in a flash. Rong Xiu seemed to have sensed something and looked up. The black fog had quietly disappeared and could not be seen, but that trace of cold aura still made Rong Xiu squint his eyes slightly. This aura was really familiar. He retracted his gaze and looked at Mo Yin again, deep in thought. Until now, Mo Yin had not really used the power of his bloodline. He would rather cause great damage to himself and sacrifice the blood in his heart. But the bloodline totem did not appear between his eyebrows. Interesting. The sect leader of Black Sword Sect is also surnamed Mo? Rong Xiu suddenly asked. His voice was always cold and low, with a trace of nobility that could not be disobeyed. When it fell into one's ears, one would almost automatically give an answer without warning. How did you? Mo Yin subconsciously spat out these 2 words, and then suddenly became alert. Rong was tricking him. He immediately kept quiet and swallowed the rest of his words. But in Rong Xiu's eyes, this was already a tacit agreement. As expected, Rong Xiu's thin lips slightly raised, but the corners of his eyes and brows were slightly cold. Previously he felt that there was something wrong with Black Sword Sect, as if it had something to do with that side. Taking advantage of the chaos, he immediately got the answer. Looking at Rong Xiu's expression, Mo Yin secretly gritted his teeth. This man was extremely cunning and had many tricks up his sleeve. If he really guessed something, it was within his expectations. But, for some reason, Rong Xiu did not do anything other than symbolically blocking them. He did not seem to be worried about Chu Liyue's safety at all, and only watched calmly. Was he too confident in Chu Liyue? Or did he have other preparations? Mo Yin could not figure it out. Rong Xiu was after all famous, and was definitely not easy to deal with. But now, the one that needed to be killed the most was Chu Liyue. He could not let her continue to act presumptuously here. Thinking of this, Mo Yin forced himself to calm down, and poured all his power into the blood sacrifice formation. Rumble! The heavenly lightning, which was even more magnificent and powerful than before, rolled down. Almost half of the sky was already illuminated by this dazzling light. And those Tianlei's target was Chu Liyue. This Black Sword Sect does have some ability. On top of a steep mountain, Chu Liyue stood halfway up the mountain, narrowing her eyes slightly, and looked at the sky not far away. This formation was much larger than the one they accidentally encountered on the day of 13th's breakthrough. Even if several venerable gods joined forces, they might not be able to achieve this. Not to mention that there were only a few venerable gods in Black Sword Sect. Including Mo Yin, the number of venerable gods in Black Sword Sect was less than that of the Nan family. But Chu Liyue was certain that even if those venerable gods of the Nan family worked together, they would not be able to trigger Tianlei of this scale. At the end of the day, the problem lay in the so-called blood sacrifice formation, and the group of people from Black Sword Sect themselves. Moreover, Other than being able to trigger Tianlei, they could also control where the Tianlei would fall. She had purposely run left and right a few times just to test the waters. In the end, the Tianlei could indeed follow her and fall. This kind of ability was not something that everyone could have. That was why Chu Luiyue muttered such a sentence. However, after realizing this, she didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. Instead, her starry eyes sparkled with excitement. If that's really the case, that's great. Dumpling glanced sideways at her. Sensing her restless emotions, Dumpling became excited as well. She flapped her wings and reddish-gold flames burned fiercely around her. If Mo Yin and the others saw Chu Luiyue's expression and knew what she was thinking, they would think that she had gone crazy. They had never seen anyone so happy when there was no one chasing after them. They were clearly in a life-and-death situation, but she did not seem to care. In fact, she was happy and excited. If this was not a problem, then what was? Chu Luiyue looked at the approaching Tianlei and slowly tightened her grip on Scarlet Heaven. The next moment, the corners of her lips lifted slightly. Dumpling, let's go. Before she finished speaking, Dumpling had already flapped her wings and rose into the air. She headed straight for the depths of the forest. Trying to escape. It's not that easy. Mo Yin gritted his teeth. Every word seemed to have been squeezed out from between his teeth. She did not want to escape before, but now she wanted to leave. It was too late. Then, under the gaze of several pairs of eyes, the Tianlei fell one after another, almost nailing Chu Luiyue to death in this mountain range. The terrifying energy formed invisible waves that spread out in all directions. In an instant the trees collapsed, and countless pink and white peach blossoms and emerald green leaves fluttered in the air. The figure wrapped in reddish gold flames quickly shuttled through. She left all the Tianlei behind. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1890. Boom, boom, boom. Several mountains were hit hard. The mountains shook and huge rocks rolled down. Huge fissures crisscrossed across the mountain range. Following that, clusters of flames spewed out from the cracks. The temperature between heaven and earth instantly rose. Soon, numerous streams of light flew out from the burning flames. They mixed with the countless Tianlei flames and headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Bang! 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 The black shield blocked in front of her, blocking all the violent energy. At the same time, more and more rust began to peel off. Streaks of light quickly disappeared. The secret text on the shield also began to reveal its original appearance. The terrifying energy quickly numbed Chu Luiyue's arm. The black shield became heavier and heavier, causing her burden to become heavier and heavier. Luckily, Dumpling was there, so her speed did not decrease too much. One person and one beast jumped around in the forest just like that. In just a short while, the entire mountain range had been bombarded by the heavenly lightning and was in shambles. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. Countless blue flames burned on top of the mountain, almost lighting up half of the sky. Scorching hot air rushed towards them. Even though they were still some distance away from the flames, they could still feel the heat on their faces, with a faint burning pain. When Luo Yin saw this scene, he was both shocked and angry, and his heart almost went cold. Nan Yuxing was still trapped in the flames and had not come out yet. He did not know what the situation was like. He made up his mind and was about to move forward. The elders behind him immediately stopped him. Luo Yin, what are you doing? Luo Yin frowned. Eldest young master is still trapped there. If we don't move now, eldest young master will most likely die. The elders looked at each other. Actually, how could they not know this? But the situation now is too dangerous. If you go rashly, not only will you not be able to help, you will also lose your life. I think we should think of another way. Another way? Now, can you think of any other useful methods? Luo Yin asked. The elder who was trying to dissuade him suddenly stopped talking. The remaining elders also had troubled looks on their faces. Luo Yin glanced at them indifferently. You guys wait here, I'll go personally. Nan Yuxing was the only successor of the patriarch. Before they left, the patriarch had repeatedly warned them to protect him. Now that Nan Yuxing was in trouble, and was facing a life-and-death crisis. How could Luo Yin sit by and do nothing? Even if he knew that the road ahead was dangerous, he still had to go. "We're going too." The other elder hesitated for a moment before responding immediately. At this time, there was really no need to hesitate on this matter. Even if they knew that there was danger ahead, and that their efforts were likely to be in vain, they could not slack off on what they should do. Otherwise, if something really happened to Nan Yuxing, the situation they would face when they returned might not be any better. "Yes, let's go together. This way, our chances of winning will definitely be greater." The rest of the people nodded in agreement. Luo Yin glanced at them and nodded. Then he turned around and rushed towards the direction where Nan Yuxing was trapped. The elders looked at each other with complicated expressions. But in the end, they didn't say much and chose to follow. At this time, the area where the mountain fire was burning had greatly expanded. The closer they got, the more they could feel the terrifying burning pain and heat. The clusters of blue flames seemed to want to burn the entire heaven and earth into ashes as they jumped wildly. Even though Luo Yin was already a god-level expert, he still felt extremely threatened at this time. Ordinary barriers couldn't stop this heat wave at all. Even the surrounding void started to collapse, and the violent spatial turbulence wreaked havoc everywhere. It was almost impossible to maintain the barrier around them for a long time. In a short while, Luo Yin chose to give up on the barrier and rush forward at full speed. He couldn't help but look in the direction of Chu Luiyue. That woman was standing on the back of the crimson gold celestial phoenix. Her dress was fluttering, and her eyes were bright. There was not the slightest bit of fear on her face. There was only endless battle intent. When he met that determined and persistent gaze, Luo Yan's heart felt as if it had been smashed by something. This woman was really not afraid. Even though the mountain fire was raging and Tianlei was bursting, she stood alone without any fear. How could an ordinary person have such courage and fighting spirit? Other than that, Luo Yan had another question in his heart. He was only at the edge now, but he already felt as if he was being roasted by fire. It was very uncomfortable, and Chu Luiyue was in the center of the countless flames. How did she endure it? This thought only flashed through Luo Yan's mind for a moment before it was quickly suppressed. Because he didn't have much time and energy to care about these things now. Right now, he only wanted to save Nan Yuxing as soon as possible. When he was close enough, Luo Yan finally heard a weak cry for help. His heart skipped a beat. This voice belonged to Nan Yuxing. "Yuxing? Yuxing." Luo Yan hurried in the direction of the voice. He had a high status in the Nan family, and he would call Nan Yuxing and Nan Yi by their names in private. Although he doted on Nan Yi the most, he also took care of Nan Yuxing. Now that Nan Yi was gone, he was naturally more concerned about Nan Yuxing. If something really happened to Nan Yuxing, Luo Yan took a deep breath. A long crack appeared on the mountain under their feet. The flames were burning fiercely. Vaguely, a figure could be seen struggling in it. Luo Yan's heart was in his mouth. Yuxing. He originally wanted to rush over directly, but the flames were burning too fiercely, and he couldn't get close at all. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Yan's force turned into a whip and flew out fiercely. Slap! The sound of the whip breaking through the air was extremely loud. In the next moment, the long whip flew into the flames and tightly wrapped around Nan Yuxing's waist. Luo Yan pulled hard. A figure wrapped in flames instantly flew out. At this moment, Nan Yuxing was covered in burns and his injuries were extremely serious. He curled up on the ground and trembled violently. Low whimpers and moans came from his throat. It seemed like he didn't have any strength to fight anymore. Luo Yan's heart was in a knot. With such injuries, even if he could barely survive, in the future, he would probably. Eldest young master. When the other elders saw this situation, their expressions changed. It wasn't that they didn't think that Nan Yuxing wouldn't be able to escape this calamity, but the situation in front of them was still beyond their imagination. Luo Yan composed himself. Extinguish the fire on eldest young master first. Before he finished speaking, a bloody wound suddenly appeared on Nan Yuxing's arm, who was lying on the ground. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1891. The wound was about an inch long and extremely deep. Even his bones could be seen. Luo Yin hesitated for a moment. Actually, such a scene was nothing to him and the other elders who were used to seeing life and death. The reason why they were so surprised was because the wound had appeared too suddenly. In that instant, there was no external interference. It was obvious that there was something wrong with Nan Yuxing's body. Why would such a wound appear on a normal person's body? Then, before they could react, a similar wound appeared on Nan Yuxing's other hand. Perhaps it was because he had been burned in the fire for too long, but most of his hands had shrunk. However, that bloody wound still appeared out of nowhere. The twisted skin and muscles seemed to have been cut open by something sharp. There was no blood dripping, but it still made one feel uneasy. Luo Yin this. The elders looked at Luo Yin subconsciously. Although they were all elders, their statuses were slightly inferior to Luo Yan's. Therefore, when something happened, they immediately asked for Luo Yan's opinion. However, Luo Yan's heart was in a mess. His eyes were fixed on the two wounds on Nan Yuxing's body. His expression was terrifyingly solemn. With just one look, he realized that there was something wrong with Nan Yuxing's body. From the looks of it, it was very likely that the force in his body had gone out of control. A god-reverend's body had accumulated a large amount of energy. Once it went out of control, it would wreak havoc in the body. The consequences would be unimaginable. Just as he was deep in thought, a wound appeared on Nan Yuxing's shoulder. Moreover, the wound on his arm was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nan Yuxing curled up on the ground. He had lost consciousness and was trembling all over. Save me. His face was severely burned and he couldn't open his eyes. Only the intermittent voices in his ears allowed him to know that Luo Yin and the others were by his side. Nan Yuxing relied on his last bit of willpower and murmured for help. Luo Yan's heart was in a knot and his brows were tightly knitted. Of course, he wanted to save Nan Yuxing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to come here. But in this situation, what should he do? Seeing that the wounds on Nan Yuxing's body were increasing, Luo Yan could only hurriedly extinguish the sparks on his body and planned to bring him back first. However, before he could touch Nan Yuxing's body, he suddenly heard Nan Yuxing's voice. I'm sorry. Luo Yan abruptly stopped and subconsciously looked at Nan Yuxing's face. Nan Yuxing's face was so badly burned that it was almost unrecognizable. However, Luo Yin could clearly hear the deep pain and guilt in those words. He stared blankly for a while and did not move. Sorry. Why did Nan Yuxing suddenly say that? Was he blaming himself for not protecting Nanny earlier? But it didn't sound that tone. It was as if he had done something wrong to Nanny. Luo. Seeing that Luo Yin had suddenly stopped moving, seemingly deep in thought, the elders felt a little strange. This voice brought Luo Yin back to his senses. I'm fine, he hurriedly replied. Just as he was about to continue, he suddenly sensed a wave of energy overflowing from Nan Yuxing's wounds. This energy was very mottled, but it was mixed with an extremely familiar aura. Luo Yan's eyes widened. He looked at Nan Yuxing in shock. This aura. He almost couldn't control himself. He quickly reached out and grabbed Nan Yuxing's wrist. Hey Luo Yan, what's wrong? Luo Yan's expression was very strange. He couldn't help but make the few elders beside him worried. He was clearly fine just now. Why did he suddenly? However, at this moment, Luo Yan could no longer hear their voices. He separated a part of his force and forced it into Nan Yuxing's body. As expected, the energy in Nan Yuxing's body was completely messed up. But the key point was, Luo Yan was clearly familiar with this energy. And that Yuan meridian. Luo Yan's hand trembled slightly, his face turned pale, and the veins on his forehead popped out. A deep sense of anger radiated from his body. The few elders sensed danger. They glanced at each other and didn't dare to ask any more questions. Luo Yan rarely revealed such an expression. They didn't know what was going on. Just as they were filled with doubts, they saw Luo Yan let go of Nan Yuxing's wrist and suddenly choked his neck. Luo Yan, eldest young master. This sudden turn of events caused the remaining elders to be stunned. They couldn't help but open their mouths in a panicked manner. However, Luo Yan's eyes were scarlet. There was a trace of malevolence in his expression. It was truly terrifying. He stared at Nan Yuxing and said word by word. "Speak. How did he die?" The moment he said that, the elders were all shocked. What did Luo Yan mean by suddenly asking eldest young master this question? Could it be that Nan Yi's death was related to eldest young master? But how was that possible? Nan Yuxing was originally in a half-dead state. After being provoked by Luo Yan, he became more awake. When he met Luo Yan's gaze, a strong sense of fear surged into his heart. Nan Yuxing muttered almost reflexively, I don't know, bang. Luo Yan suddenly made his move. He grabbed Nan Yuxing's neck and slammed his head to the ground. Tell me the truth. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1892. Luo Yan was ruthless. This time, Nan Yuxing's head was smashed open. Blood splattered everywhere. Nan Yuxing's head buzzed, and he almost fainted. The elders standing by the side were also completely dumbfounded. Why did Luo Yan suddenly attack so heavily? Nan Yuxing was the eldest young master. If anything happened to him, how were they going to explain it when they returned? Luo Yan's attitude was also very strange. Just a moment ago, he didn't care about his own safety and wanted to save Nan Yuxing. In the end, for some reason, his attitude suddenly took a 180-degree turn. From the looks of it, not only did he not intend to save Nan Yuxing, he even wanted to kill Nan Yuxing personally. Luo Yan, calm down. An elder finally couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up. But before he could say anything else, Luo Yan turned around and glanced at him. This glance was extremely cold. It was as if it was wrapped in deep anger and hatred. That elder's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't say anything to persuade him. They had never seen Luo Yan like this. In the entire Nan family, Luo Yan's strength was one of the top few people. His status was noble, but his personality was very indifferent. He rarely interfered in any of the Nan family's decisions, and would only intervene when it involved Nan Yi. This time, he suddenly acted like this. Could it be that he was sure that Nan Yi's death was really related to Nan Yuxing? But how was this possible? Nan Yuxing was Nan Yi's biological brother. Luo Yan retracted his gaze and grabbed Nan Yuxing's neck, forcing him to raise his head. Speak. What's going on with your Yuan meridian? Nan Yuxing's heart turned cold. Luo Yan actually asked such a question. So what Chu Liyue said before was all true? Nan Yuxing's mind was in a mess. Coupled with his serious injuries, the blood in his body surged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. But he couldn't spit out a single word. His guess was confirmed, and his heart was like dead ashes. Seeing his reaction, how could Luo Yan not understand? He slowly tightened his grip, and a strong killing intent surged out from his eyes. Bits and pieces of the past flashed through his mind in an incomparably chaotic manner. He had always felt that Nan Yi's death was a little strange. However, due to his overwhelming grief and lack of evidence, he was certain that the mysterious man he saw before he fainted that day was from the Yuntian Tower. Because of this, he hated Rong Xiao and Chu Liyue to the core. When Nan Yuxing mentioned that he wanted to come to the Peach Blossom Cove to seek revenge, he agreed without hesitation. But he never would have thought the real person who killed Nan Yi was actually someone else. The Yuan meridian and energy in Nan Yuxing's body clearly belonged to Nan Yi. No wonder he could recover in such a short time. He even made a breakthrough. So all of this was because he had to bear Nan Yi's life. Now that the truth was in front of his eyes, everything that had happened before seemed very wrong. Now that he thought about it, he should have sensed that something was wrong. However, his eyes had long been blinded by hatred, so how could he see those things? Until now, everything was revealed. Luo Yan suddenly laughed. He truly felt that he was ridiculous. And he also felt that Nan Yuxing was ridiculous. They all said that they were here to avenge Nan Yi, but in reality, they had found the wrong person. Especially Nan Yuxing. He was simply a thief crying thief. What a joke. That smiling face kept flashing in front of Luo Yan's eyes. His eyes turned cold, and he slowly tightened his grip. Nan Yuxing sensed danger, and instinctively wanted to escape. However, the energy in his body was raging wildly, and his internal organs were almost severely damaged. He didn't even have the strength to stand up, so how could he talk about anything else? Therefore, he could only gasp for breath and tremble in vain. Luo Yan's face was expressionless. Luo Yan. The few elders also felt that his condition was very strange. Just as they were about to open their mouths to persuade him, they heard the crisp sound of bones cracking. Crack! The few of them were horrified. Luo Yan had broken Nan Yuxing's neck. He wanted his life. Nan Yuxing's head tilted, and his body trembled. Soon he stopped breathing. There was dead silence. Everyone did not think that Luo Yan was actually really so heartless. He killed Nan Yuxing without hesitation. Because they were too shocked, the few elders all subconsciously held their breaths. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. However, Luo Yan acted as if nothing had happened and stood up. He raised his arm and flicked his wrist. Nan Yuxing's corpse was thrown back into the burning flames by him. In the blink of an eye, it was completely devoured. The whole process was smooth and Luo Yan didn't hesitate at all. Then, he turned around and looked at the remaining elders. His eyes were cold and gloomy like never before. Eldest young master was defeated by Shengguan Yu and died in the sea of fire. The elders understood that this was an order. Luo Yan had killed the first young master in front of them. How could he still say that it was Shengguan Yu who did it? Yes, we will avenge the young master. One of the elders was the first to react. His face was pale, and he said with a trembling voice. Luo Yan nodded in satisfaction. For eldest young master, we will go through fire and water. Today, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will not hesitate. What do you think? What else can we do? You've already said so much. Can others still refute you? The elders nodded their heads stiffly. Even though they had seen many storms, this was the first time they had experienced something like this. Luo Yan nodded. Whoever kills Shengguan, you will be the hero of the Nan family. In the distance, Chu Luiyue, who had just dodged Tianlei, also noticed the situation here and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Luo Yan killed Nan Yuxing with his own hands and planned to push the blame to her? Her red lips curled into an extremely cold smile. She wasn't surprised that Luo Yan killed Nan Yuxing. She had long seen that Luo Yan had feelings for Nan Yi. Although he hid it very well, some things could be seen at a glance. But she wasn't happy that he wanted to drag her down with him. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1893. As if sensing her gaze, Luo Yan suddenly raised his head and looked over. The two of them were far apart, but at this moment, when their eyes met, they could clearly see the emotions surging in each other's eyes. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Luo Yan, Nan Yuxing was killed by you. Everyone saw it clearly. Aren't you too much to push the blame onto me? Luo Yan's expression was cold. You were the one who caused Nan Yuxing's injuries, and he died in this strange flame in the end. What's wrong with me saying that you killed him? Chu Luiyue laughed. After hearing Luo Yan's words and knowing his plan, Chu Luiyue knew that this person had gone mad. There was no need to continue talking to him. Nan Yuxing was Nan Yifan's only son. In order to save Nan Yuxing, Nan Yifan was even willing to give up his other daughter's life. This showed how much Nan Yuxing valued his only heir. Now, Nan Yuxing was dead. Whoever killed him would become Nan Yifan's mortal enemy. Offending Nan Yifan was undoubtedly offending the entire Nan family. No one would be able to bear the consequences of such a serious incident. Luo Yan dared to do this in broad daylight, because he was sure that the elders would not dare to tell anyone about this. Moreover, one side was his own people, and the other side was his enemy. Who would Nan Yifan believe? The answer was self-evident. Boom! Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. This time, it was even stronger than the previous one. It almost tore apart the dark clouds that had accumulated in the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up. Just in time. As soon as she thought about it, Tuanzi immediately understood and flapped its wings to fly up. This time Dumpling headed straight for the mountains further away. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and looked at the black shield in her hand. After the fierce battle just now, more than 10 pieces of rust had fallen off. The efficiency was much higher than before. However, the rust that fell off was only 1/10 of the entire shield. She could see that the secret text on it was gradually revealing itself. Although he could only see the tip of the iceberg for now, Chu Luiyue had a clear premonition in his heart. Once the rust on it completely peeled off, it would definitely shine brightly. A faint lustrous glow lingered on the black shield, faintly discernible. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound came from the front. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up. Not far in front of him, the void was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The closer half of the mountain started to shake violently under the impact of the spatial turbulence. Some of the mountain rocks began to roll towards the strange black clouds. A terrifying suction force was emitted from within. It was as if it wanted to devour everything. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. The void energy of the Peach Blossom Cove was chaotic and could easily collapse. Now that such an intense battle had broken out, it was normal for such a situation to occur. However, the speed of the collapse still exceeded Chu Luiyue's expectations. She frowned slightly and decided to let Dumpling change the direction. However, at this moment, the black shield suddenly emitted a faint buzzing sound. Chu Luiyue's heart shook. The black shield's reaction proved that there was an extremely important force hidden under the mountain. She had to go. Tuanzi turned her head and glanced at her. Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes, then suddenly lifted herself up and jumped. She actually went straight for the mountain alone. Almost at the same time, an astonishing suction force wrapped around her from all directions. The moment her feet landed on the mountain, her body suddenly fell. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the void that had already collapsed beyond recognition. Rongxiu's eyes narrowed. "You are digression. I'm going to slack off and eat the New Year's Eve dinner. I wish everyone a happy new year. Be healthy and safe. Be victorious in everything. In the future, we will continue to be together every day." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1894. With a thought, his figure instantly disappeared from where he was. Master. 13 and the rest also became anxious. Just as they were about to move, Sinyi stopped them. "Wait and see." Sinyi's words were concise. Wu Yao looked at the terrifying scene and couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, are we still not doing anything at this time?" The situation on Master's side seemed to be really dangerous. "Yes, the void is collapsing. Before long, the entire Peach Blossom dock will." Yu Jiu gripped her wooden sword tightly, her heart burning with anxiety. Sinyi's expression was as calm as ever. "If you go over now, you'll only cause trouble for Master. Why don't you just stay here?" Wu Yao and the rest were conflicted. On one hand, they were worried about Master. On the other hand, they trusted Big Brother. Seeing Sinyi like this, it seemed they really didn't need to worry. "Sai, don't worry. I don't dare to say anything about other places, but here, Master will definitely be fine." Sanson, who was at the side, also advised. He had personally witnessed the power of Master and that black shield. That day, it had almost burned his small space. Although the flames on the mountains looked scary, thinking about it carefully, wasn't Master the one who set them off herself? Sanson could vaguely guess what Master was looking for. From the start, she deliberately ran over here and used Tianlei, which was triggered by the blood sacrifice array of Majian sect, to split the mountains. Wasn't everything planned by Master long ago? And Rongxiu's reaction earlier was clearly to cooperate with Master. The power of Peach Blossom Dock space is very chaotic. Whenever there's a problem, such a situation will occur. However, it usually doesn't take long to automatically recover. Moreover, Master has many trump cards. Such a small fluctuation isn't enough to hurt her. You can put your hearts back into your stomachs. Although Sanson spent most of his attention and energy on business, he was still very trustworthy when he was serious at critical moments. Right now, apart from Sinyi, he had the highest status among the 13 Yu guards present. Hearing him say this, Wu Yao and the rest exchanged glances. Although they could see the worry in each other's eyes, they didn't say anything in the end and nodded in agreement. "Look, 13 suddenly exclaimed, attracting everyone's attention. Several pairs of eyes looked over. At this moment, Rongxiu's figure suddenly appeared above a mountain peak in the distance. The wind blew, and the corners of his snow-white clothes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. A golden flame suddenly gushed out from his palm and transformed into countless stars that scattered in all directions. From afar, it looked like a barrier, but also like a giant net. Condense! A low and cold voice spread far and wide in this dark and bitterly cold world. As soon as he finished speaking, the collapsing space suddenly froze. The black spatial crack seemed to have been enveloped by the giant net formed by the golden light dots, and it stopped collapsing. At this moment, the scene seemed to freeze. Time and space seemed to have stopped flowing. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. The collapse of the void was caused by the collision of internal and external forces. It was not something that could be controlled by human strength. Otherwise, Peach Blossom Cove would not have remained unoccupied for so many years. However, at this moment, Rongxiu directly froze the collapsing void and forcefully suppressed the rampaging space turbulence. This was simply, how is this possible? Mo Yun's eyes suddenly widened, and they were filled with horror. Just a moment ago, when he saw Chu Liyue's figure being swallowed by the void, he was secretly delighted. He had stayed here for so long, and he had seen many similar scenes. No matter who it was, once they were sucked into it, their ending would be extremely miserable. There was a 99% chance that they would be crippled even if they did not die. It would be best if Chu Liyue could die inside directly. If not, even if he managed to escape alive, he would not be able to make it. At that time, wouldn't he be at their mercy? It would be up to them to kill or torture him. However, who knew that Rongxiu, who had been watching from the sidelines, would suddenly make a move? And his strength was so powerful. Looking at the tall figure standing in the air, Mo Yun's heart suddenly flashed with a trace of inexplicable fear. One must know that even he might not be able to do this. However, Rongxiu sighed. With just a light lift of his hand, he did it easily, as if it was effortless. Mo Yun had long heard many rumors about Rongxiu. He knew that this man was not easy to deal with. However, he did not expect him to be so heaven-defying. Such strength had long surpassed the strength of an ordinary venerable god expert. On the other side, Luo Yan and the others who were about to give chase also stopped in their tracks when they saw this scene, and their expressions were complicated. Forcefully freezing the collapsing void. How did that Rongxiu do it? An elder said in disbelief, almost unable to believe what he saw. They were also venerable gods, but if they were to make a move, they would definitely not be able to do so. If he's so powerful, why didn't he make a move earlier? If he really wants to fight with us, I'm afraid it'll be another tough battle. Another elder was also deeply worried. Previously, their attention was focused on Chu Liyue, and they did not pay much attention to other things. However, when Rongxiu made a move, they finally realized that something was wrong. Since he's so powerful, isn't it intentional that he's been watching from the sidelines? Is he too confident in Chu Liyue, or is there another reason? They could not figure out these things, and they became more and more flustered. Moreover, the strength that Rongxiu had displayed had far exceeded their expectations. Luo Yan stared at Rongxiu's figure, and his hands gradually clenched into fists. If Rongxiu stopped him, then what happened later would be difficult to proceed according to plan. Now he vaguely understood why Nan Yifan was so afraid of Rongxiu. Boom! The blood sacrifice formation hung in the sky, and blood qi filled the sky. Crazy power wreaked havoc everywhere, and Tianlei was still falling one after another. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1895. The next moment, Chu Liyue's figure rushed out of the dazzling golden light that enveloped the sky. Everyone immediately looked over. The woman's red dress fluttered in the wind. She had black hair, snow-white skin, and bright eyes. The corners of her eyes and the tip of her brows were filled with intense battle intent. She was completely unscathed. For a moment, everyone present had different reactions. The people from the 13th you naturally heaved a sigh of relief. However, the people from the Black Sword sect and the Nan family had dark expressions. It was one thing for Rong Xiao to be so heaven-defying. But how could Chu Luiyue, a mere high god, be so strong as well? Even her eminence might not be able to escape unscathed from the collapsing void. How could she? More importantly, the place where Chu Luiyue was swallowed by the void and charged out of it was not the same. There was a deep valley in between. This. Why does it seem like Rong Xiao already knew that she would come out from there, and purposely went there early to wait? That's impossible, right? Who would be able to guess this? Who doesn't know that once a cultivator enters the void, even they don't know where they will be sent to? Not to mention Rong Xiao. But the current situation doesn't seem right. The elders of the Nan family discussed in low voices. Luo Yin didn't say anything, but his expression turned even uglier. The more the other party acted like this, the more difficult it was to deal with. He raised his head to take a look. The blood sacrifice array was still operating. People from the Black Sword sect were rushing over and joining in. This caused the blood sacrifice array to become stronger and stronger. But even though the Tianlei had almost completely destroyed the rolling mountain range, Chu Luiyue was still safe and sound. This couple was simply one weirder than the other. Screech. Tuanzi let out a clear cry, drew a reddish-gold ray of light in midair, and rapidly flew toward Chu Luiyue. Everyone had mixed feelings. At first, they thought that Chu Luiyue was able to dodge so many attacks because of the reddish-gold celestial phoenix's help. But what happened now was like a slap to their faces. Even if Chu Luiyue relied on his own strength, he could still move around like a fish in water. Rong Xiao. Chu Luiyue finally heaved a sigh of relief after escaping from the chaotic space and the thick darkness. When that familiar handsome and enchanting face came into view, her hanging heart immediately calmed down a lot. Rong Xiao reached out to her. Come here. Chu Luiyue walked forward. Crack. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking could be heard. Chu Luiyue was shocked and quickly looked over. It was the void that was forcefully frozen by Rong Xiao. And there was a crack. Rong Xiao narrowed his eyes and immediately went forward. He grabbed Chu Luiyue's hand and took her into his arms. The next moment, just as he turned around, the space behind him finally broke free from the huge golden net and collapsed again. Countless fine golden lights scattered in all directions. A terrifying force rushed toward the surroundings. Rong Xiao took a step and already moved to another position with Chu Luiyue. Dumpling followed closely behind. It flapped its wings and left behind a flame to block that force. Although it couldn't completely block that violent force, it still gave Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao enough time to leave. A loud bang was heard. Chu Luiyue leaned on Rong Xiao's arms and looked over his shoulder. The space was collapsing more and more. More and more black was spreading between heaven and earth. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly tightened. Rong Xiao's strength could only temporarily suppress a small area. But looking at the current situation, the entire Peach Blossom Cove would be affected. Digression. Happy New Year to everyone. Continued at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1896. How is it? Rong Xiao asked the person in his arms in a low voice. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze. The two looked into each other's eyes. She nodded slightly. Everything went well. There was no need for any superfluous words. Their minds were connected, so he naturally knew what she was planning to do. That's good. Rong Xiao's thin lips curved into a smile. Although she wasn't injured, she must have used up a lot of energy after going through several rounds of bombardment. It wouldn't be easy if she didn't get anything out of it after working so hard. Fortunately, she always knew what she was doing. It was the same this time. Do you want to continue? Rong Xiao asked. He looked down at the black shield in her hand. A small part of the rust on it had already peeled off. Faint light could be seen lingering on it. The secret text engraved on it was gradually revealing its original appearance. Chu Luiyue nodded, then frowned slightly. But there's nothing here. We have to find another place. It was a rare opportunity. Of course, she had to continue. However, she had already tested all the places here. There was nothing she needed at the bottom of the remaining mountains. Therefore, she had to continue fighting this battle, but she had to find another place. Rongxiu nodded with a calm expression. He was not surprised at all. Then let's change. Peach Blossom Dock was vast. This place was just a corner of it. When Chu Luiyue said that she wanted to search the entire Peach Blossom Dock, he had already expected such a situation. Chu Luiyue nodded and looked at the black shield in her hand again. As the rust on it peeled off, the weight of this thing was increasing. Chu Luiyue was already having a hard time holding it with one hand. She started to circulate the force in her body to reduce the weight. However, this action consumed an enormous amount of his strength. Fortunately, the force in her dantian was abundant. It wasn't a problem for her to deal with this for the time being. She just didn't know what would happen in the end. Chu Luiyue quickly put these thoughts away. She walked out of Rongxiu's arms. Let's split up. Rongxiu knew that she had other plans, so he didn't ask and just squeezed her hand. Be careful, I'll stay with you. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed, and she held his hand. His dry and warm palm emitted a comforting warmth that made her feel at ease. She didn't say anything. She just took a deep look at Rongxiu, her eyes bright. With Rongxiu around, she could always feel at ease. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. After that, Chu Luiyue turned around, tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and dashed forward. Dumpling followed closely behind. The figures of man and beast quickly disappeared into the distance. Rongxiu, on the other hand, chose another direction and kept a distance from them, following them at a leisurely pace. Everyone was stunned. What are these two doing? Since Rongxiu went to bring them out, why did he let Chu Luiyue leave alone? Isn't he worried at all with the turbulence in all directions? The people of Black Sword Sect and Nan family were stunned. They couldn't figure out what Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue's motive for doing this. The 13 Yu guards were shocked at first, but they quickly chose to accept it. Judging from the situation, it's their master who wants to do this. Then there's nothing to worry about. Sinny moved. Follow them. Yes. As soon as he gave the order, Sanson and the others immediately responded, and then chased after him. They didn't care what their master wanted to do. They only knew that no matter what, they had to follow their master. Everything happened too quickly. By the time the rest of the people reacted, a few people, including the 13 Yu guards, had already left with Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu. Seeing their figures getting further and further away, Mo Yun and the others finally regained their senses. Vice Sect Master, they're running away, someone said anxiously. Mo Yun's face seemed to be covered with a thick layer of ice, stiff and cold. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent that was about to overflow. Of course he could see that. But the key was, where were they planning to go? No, perhaps he should ask what Chu Luiyue wanted to do. The two of them seemed to have said something, but he was still some distance away from them and couldn't hear it. But judging from their reactions afterward, it wasn't hard to guess that it was Chu Luiyue's idea to leave on their own. She hasn't had enough trouble here, and now she wants to run further away? Activate the second level of the blood sacrifice formation. Mo Yin gave the order without any hesitation. Anyway, he had to kill this person today. When the people of Black Sword Sect heard this, they all looked hesitant. Mo Lin hesitated for a moment, but still spoke. Vice Sect Master, the blood sacrifice formation is very powerful, and it consumes a lot of energy. If we activate the second level, it will definitely cause more chaos. At that time, it will be even more difficult to capture them. Mo Yin looked at him with a cold smile. Mo Lin, you've become so bold now that you don't even listen to my orders? Mo Lin's face paled, and he hurriedly explained. Vice Sect Master, this subordinate definitely didn't mean that. This subordinate just felt that this blood sacrifice formation doesn't seem to have much effect on Shangguanyu. The dozens of people from Black Sword Sect who followed them here had already made their move. Tianlei, which was summoned here, couldn't be said to not be terrifying. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to destroy this mountain range in such a short period of time. But what about Chu Luiyue? She was completely unharmed. She clearly had an extremely powerful trump card that allowed her to deal with such a terrifying attack easily. If they wanted to activate the second level of the blood sacrifice formation, they would need an extremely large amount of energy to support it. If that was the case, they might not be able to do anything to Chu Luiyue. But these people from Black Sword Sect would most likely be in trouble. Others might not know, but Emo Lin, who was from Black Sword Sect, knew all of this. The reason why the blood sacrifice formation was so powerful, and could erupt with so much power, was because once this formation was activated, it would crazily steal and devour the essence and blood of the people who activated it. If it was light, they would be injured, and their future and lifespan would be damaged. If it was heavy, they would die. The cold smile on Emo Yun's face gradually faded. In its place was an undisguised anger and killing intent. Then, do you have a better idea? He asked in an extremely cold voice. Sensing that something was wrong with his aura, Emo Lin's blood seemed to have stopped flowing. No, this subordinate is useless, Chi. Before he could finish his sentence, Emo Yun had already raised his hand. A black and red origin power surged out from his palm. It transformed into a long whip and coiled around Emo Lin's neck. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Emo Lin's body flew uncontrollably onto the huge blood sacrifice formation. In almost an instant, that figure was swallowed by the surging blood chi. Digression Kana, slowly updating, at around 6:30 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1897. Mullen only let out a short and hurried scream before he quickly fell silent. Soon, when the blood faded, there was only a skeleton left in the middle of the blood sacrifice array. There were only a few pieces of scarlet flesh hanging on the bones. It was extremely bloody. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Some of them could not help but turn around and vomit. Actually, to the people of Ink Sword Sect, they had seen all kinds of bloody and cruel scenes. However, the scene in front of them still had a huge impact on them. Especially when the person who died was Emo Lin. He was Emo Yun's confidant. Previously, when Lan Qingfeng was in trouble, Emo Lin did not take his life. Emo Yun even gave him a chance to make up for his mistake by meritorious deeds. However, now, Emo Yun had directly taken action and used such a terrifying and cruel method to end Emo Lin's life. What confidant? What importance? Anyone who dared to disobey Emo Yun's orders would end up like this. Emo Yun was such a person. Who else wants to object? Emo Yun looked around and asked coldly. No one spoke. Even those who had a strong reaction and were retching were so scared that their faces turned pale. They quickly stopped. Dead silence. It was not the first time they knew that Emo Yun was ruthless. However, today, Emo Yun's actions had refreshed their understanding of him. Emo Lin's skeleton was being crushed by the power of the blood sacrifice array. That voice made one's heart turn cold. At this time, who would dare to stand out and say no? Emo Yun nodded with satisfaction. This was the effect he wanted. It was not easy to cultivate a subordinate who was convenient to use, but it was not a pity to lose him. At most, he could choose another one in the future. After all, Ink Sword Sect did not lack people the most. Emo Yun crossed his hands in front of him. Blood sacrifice array second level, open. The dark clouds in the sky were gathering more and more. The thick, nauseating smell of blood permeated the air. Chu Luiyue looked back and frowned slightly. The blood sacrifice array seemed to have changed. Emo Yun had made up his mind to fight to the death and kill her. In fact, she was not afraid of Tianlei, which they had summoned. However, she still felt a little uneasy in her heart. This was because the space around her had been collapsing along the way. Between heaven and earth, violent energy collided in all directions, tearing apart countless spatial cracks. Although she had stayed in the Peach Blossom Cove before, she had never caused such a huge commotion. Looks like I have to end this as soon as possible, Chu Luiyue thought to himself. As long as he could find the remaining ones as soon as possible and completely peel off the rust on the black shield, this matter would come to an end. At that time, the collapsed void of the Peach Blossom dock should be able to repair itself. A slight fluctuation suddenly came from the distant horizon. Chu Luiyue's heart stirred as he looked into the distant sky. The peach blossom dock's enchantment fell from the sky at the point where the heavens and earth connected. That was where the energy fluctuation had come from. Chu Liyue's heart sank slightly. Even the barrier was affected. There was no time to lose. He had to end the battle quickly. As this thought flashed through his mind, Chu Liyue once again circulated the origin power in his body. He rushed forward at an even faster speed. The commotion here was too big. Very quickly, many people in the Peach Blossom Dock City were alerted. What's going on over there? You still don't know? That's Ink Sword Sect chasing after the people of the U residence. U residence? Third boss. How is this possible? Isn't the relationship between Third Boss and Ink Sword Sect very good? Why would Ink Sword Sect suddenly attack the people of the U residence? How can it be fake? I saw them chasing out of the city with my own eyes. Other than Ink Sword Sect, there was another group of people who seemed to be involved in the chase as well. The group that came seemed to be the Nan family of the Divine Ruins world. The leader seemed to be the young master of the Nan family. However, their target was not Third Boss. Do you still remember that some people came to the U residence a while ago? This time, Ink Sword Sect and Nan family were going to deal with them. Didn't they say that they were Third Boss's friends? What friends? Among those people, there was the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, Rong Xiu, and his new princess consort Shang Guanyu. The Ink Sword Sect and Nan family joined forces to chase after the two of them. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. Rong Xiu, Shang Guanyu. These two names were like thunder in the ears of the people of the Divine Ruins world recently. Even the Peach Blossom Dock, which was located at the border of the Divine Ruins world, had heard of them. It couldn't be helped. What happened at the wedding ceremony of the two people was too shocking. Because of this, the people were even more confused. It's actually the two of them. Didn't they just get married at the Yuntian Tower not long ago? Why would they suddenly come to the Peach Blossom Dock? I heard that Third Boss is from Shangguanyu. That's not the point. The point is, aren't Rong Xiu and Shangguanyu close to the two primordial divine beast clans? What exactly did they do to make the people of the Black Sword Sect and the Nan family hate them so much, to the point that they would rather offend such existences than kill the two of them? This was what everyone couldn't figure out. Look, they are still fighting. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Everyone's expression changed when they looked over. The sky in the distance was already covered by layers of dark clouds. Several Tianlei surged in the sky, and its aura was terrifying. The terrifying collision caused the endless void to collapse. However, at this moment, a petite figure in a red dress was flying across the sky at high speed. Wherever it passed, silver and red starlight intertwined like a surging river. That's a godly realm? Someone couldn't help but mumble in shock. Didn't they say that Shangguanyu is only a high god? How can she use such a terrifying godly realm? They were still quite a distance away from that place, but they could still faintly feel that astonishing aura and pressure. This is bad. The barrier of Peach Blossom Dock is about to collapse. Someone exclaimed in shock. Is she going to destroy Peach Blossom Dock? Digression, I'm tired. I want to rest. That's all for today. I'll make it up to you later. Moi. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1898. Look, it's not because of her. It's because of the Ink Sword Sect. Another cry of surprise came from the crowd. Many people flew up one after another and looked in that direction. At this time, half of the sky was covered by thick black clouds and the sky was dark. Furthermore, the clouds were still rapidly spreading towards the city from that side. Tianlei was moving crazily in the clouds. A huge blood-red totem hung in the air. That's the Ink Sword Sect's totem? Some sharp-eyed people recognized the appearance of the totem and murmured in shock. This Tianlei, it's obviously because of them. It's them. A young man in the crowd suddenly said with certainty. This is the Ink Sword Sect's usual method. Their monthly assessment was actually the same method they used to pass the test. As long as a few people work together and set up a similar formation, they can quickly attract Tianlei. They used these heavenly lightning to screen out the cultivators who were taking part in the assessment. Only those who were talented enough and strong enough would be able to survive this round. As for the rest, they were the ones who took the lives of the rest. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The street was dead silent for a moment, and then a commotion broke out. Is this real? Those people are all dead? It can't be, right? Only 10 or 20% of the Black Sword sect's monthly assessment are able to pass. If the remaining ones all die, then wouldn't the number of people they've killed over the past 1 or 2 years be countless? This, brother, you should be careful with your words. If the Ink Sword sect's people hear it, the man snorted. So what if they hear it? I saw it with my own eyes. It's definitely not fake. Besides, it's been so long. Haven't any of you suspected that those who failed to enter the Ink Sword sect all left the Peach Blossom Cove and never appeared again? The crowd fell silent. Actually, it wasn't that no one had suspected this, but the Ink Sword sect was too powerful in the Peach Blossom Cove. Even if there were people who had doubts, not many would dare to verify it. Now that someone suddenly said this, it naturally caused many people's hearts to waver. If you have the time to doubt the truth, why don't you think about what to do next? The Black Sword sect was clearly determined to kill Rong Xiao and Sheng Guanyu. They were willing to pay any price to do so. Even Mo Yin personally took action. If the Peach Blossom dock really collapses, at that time, it will be difficult for everyone to escape death. The man's voice was deep and powerful, causing many people's hearts to tighten. They were not stupid and knew that this was definitely not an exaggeration. In an instant, many people felt discontent and resentment towards the Black Sword sect. It doesn't matter if you want to kill someone or if you want to die, but you can't let so many people from Peach Blossom Cove die with you, right? By creating such a huge commotion, wasn't it obvious that they wanted everyone in the city to suffer as well? If the Peach Blossom dock was destroyed, none of the people here would be able to escape. Then what should we do now? Someone asked hurriedly. The man pondered for a moment. According to what I know, their formation is very strange. The more people that participate, the stronger it becomes. Just now, I saw that Mo Yin had already sent out a signal to gather the people from the Black Sword sect. I think he wants them to go and help. In my opinion, why don't we go and stop the people from the Black Sword sect first? If fewer people go, the formation won't have more power to support it. Naturally, it won't work. Many people looked at each other when they heard this. Is this feasible? That's the Black Sword sect we're talking about. With so few people, can we be a match for them? That's right. Moreover, if Mo Yin decides to punish us, the man raised his eyebrows. Everyone, if we don't stop the Black Sword sect today, we don't even know if we can survive until tomorrow. Moreover, the Black Sword sect has been tyrannical in the Peach Blossom dock for a long time. It's time for them to learn a lesson. Isn't that right? In any case, today, I, Duan Qingchuan, will fight the Black Sword sect to the end. If you want to, then follow me. If you don't dare, I won't force you. Anyway, life and death are predestined. Everyone, please do as you wish. After he finished speaking, he actually pushed off the ground with the tip of his foot and headed straight in the direction of the Ink Sword sect. Brother Duan, we'll go with you. Me too. We'll go too. The Black Sword sect killed a few of my brothers. We've wanted to take revenge for this for a long time. At this critical moment, many people gritted their teeth and made the decision to follow Duan Qingchuan. Actually, Duan Qingchuan was right. Even if it was for themselves, they had to take action this time. The Black Sword sect had already disregarded the safety of the entire Peach Blossom dock. Why should they show mercy? More and more people headed towards the Black Sword sect. Soon, they met the people who were coming out of the Black Sword sect and were planning to head towards Mo Yin. Seeing this, the people were even more certain of their guesses. The Black Sword sect was truly willing to gamble with the strength of their entire sect. Stop them! Duan Qingchuan shouted and took the lead to charge forward. When the people beside him heard this, they immediately made their moves. Before the people of the Black Sword sect could react to what was happening, a fierce battle had already broken out. Both sides quickly clashed. The Black Sword sect had already sent out most of their top forces. In addition, due to the incident with Lan Qifeng, they had already lost many people. Hence, they did not have the upper hand in the battle with Duan Qingchuan and the others. The news spread quickly. Many people in the Peach Blossom dock rushed over one after another. It was obvious that they wanted to get rid of the people of the Black Sword sect. Seeing that more and more people were coming, the Black Sword sect, that was initially dismissive, finally panicked. What's going on? Why are there so many people rushing over in such a short time? In a remote courtyard in the west of the city, a figure hurriedly walked in. In the courtyard, a person was standing with his hands behind his back. My lord, Qingchuan and the others have already led their men to the Black Sword sect. We've also mobilized all the troops in the city to head there together. The Black Sword sect is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. We should be able to take them down soon. That person turned around. He had a handsome face and a cold gaze. It was Yanqing. Digression, today's update time is not fixed. Let's read it together at 6 p.m. The epidemic is serious. We've already sealed off the districts and villages here. Everyone should stay at home. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1899. He nodded slightly. You must kill all the people from Ink Sword sect. Leave no one alive. His voice was cold and indifferent as usual. Yes, that person replied. We have been hiding here for a long time, waiting for this day. We will not disappoint you. Yanqing's brows twitched. Back then, it was His Highness who personally appointed you, so he naturally trusts you. The man chuckled. I thought we would have to wait a little longer, but His Highness and the princess consort arrived so quickly. It must be third boss's doing. If he hadn't started a business here, and wrote to Tsin-Yi and the others, they would have to wait even longer. Yanqing pondered for a moment. Do the people of Yu Manor know about you? I don't think so. We spend most of our time scattered around Peach Blossom Cove. Even when we attacked Ink Sword sect this time, we split up and acted separately. If even Ink Sword sect didn't notice, it's impossible for Yu Manor to know. That person chuckled. Don't worry. Before we came here, His Highness told us that if the princess consort's people came, we didn't have to show ourselves. Later on, third boss came and quickly started the business. We didn't join in the fun. If they didn't have to deal with Ink Sword sect this time, they wouldn't even meet Yanqing. Originally, we thought that since third boss came here alone, he would be isolated and helpless, so we planned to help him secretly. But we didn't expect third boss to be so capable that he didn't need us at all. Moreover, he built Yu Manor in such a short time. He gave a thumbs up. As expected of the princess consort's people. Very impressive. Hearing this, Yanqing narrowed his eyes. A seductive and wanton figure suddenly flashed through his mind. He raised his brows slightly. The 13th Yu Manor is indeed extraordinary. That person didn't notice the subtle change in his expression, and continued to ask. Sir, we have more or less taken control of Ink Sword sect. Do you want to send people to His Highness and the princess consort's side? No need. Before he could finish speaking, Yanqing spoke up and rejected his suggestion. Tsin-Yi and the others have already gone over. Moreover, His Highness and princess consort did this intentionally, so there's no need to worry. That person raised his head hesitantly. But, sir, look at the commotion over there. It's almost spreading to the city. Did he really not need their help? Yanqing lifted his gaze slightly and looked towards the horizon. Under the dark sky, Tianlei surged and the wind howled. Countless voids were collapsing. Large expanses of blackness spread out like a giant beast, about to devour everything. The enchantment of the Peach Blossom Cove was trembling violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. A bright and resplendent silver-red god domain surged like a clear river. A woman, with her shoulders and back straight, hovered in midair. With a shield in her left hand, and a sword in her right, she looked like a god of war. Yanqing was slightly shocked and murmured in a low voice. We still don't know who exactly needs reinforcements. Rumble. A bright bolt of heavenly lightning struck down with a loud crash. Chu Luiyue looked up with a cold gaze. She had already shifted her position, and was extremely far away from Lan Qingfeng. However, Ma Jin's sect was chasing after her relentlessly. They had already controlled the blood sacrifice array and lured Tianlei here. The wind howled in her ears. Voids were collapsing in all directions. In the distance, the enchantment of the Peach Blossom Cove was on the verge of collapsing. Chu Luiyue felt as if there were countless forces around her that were crazily pulling at her. It was as if they wanted to tear her apart. With a thought, a golden armor quickly covered her body. Have you had enough fun? Her gaze was cold as she scolded in a deep voice. Even if Mo Yin and the others were not annoyed, she had already lost her patience. Hearing her voice, Mo Yin was stunned at first. Then, his face turned cold as he sneered. Why? Don't you want to escape? Even if you want to escape, you will need to expend a lot of energy. Chu Luiyue clearly wanted to play along with him until the end. However, in the blink of an eye, she stopped and asked this question. It was likely that she could not take it anymore. There was a distance between the two of them. However, Chu Luiyue could still hear the arrogance in Mo Yin's voice. She could not help but sneer in her heart. That's right. I don't want to waste any more time with you. If the Peach Blossom Cove collapsed, even she did not dare to predict the situation. Therefore, she could not afford to waste any more time with these people. Mo Yin raised his voice. It's too late. Shangguanyu, Rongxiao, if you had knelt down and admitted defeat at the beginning, we might have left your bodies intact. However, that's impossible now. Ma Jin's sect had paid a huge price to hunt down these two people. Although Mo Yin did not care about the lives of these people, he cared about Ma Jin's sect's reputation. He had to avenge the slaps from these two people. Chu Luiyue's lips suddenly curled up into a smile. Her smile was extremely cold and did not reach her eyes. Very good. I think so too. As she spoke, she slowly tightened her grip on Scarlet Heaven's sword. Rongxiao, who had been following not far away, saw her expression and suddenly had a thought. 13 asked uneasily. Big brother, why do I feel that Master is planning to do something? Yuju nodded and whispered. I think so too. They had followed Chu Luiyue for many years and knew her temperament very well. Master rarely revealed such an expression. Cindy suddenly said. Everyone get ready. Pay attention to your safety. If necessary, retreat at any time. The flesh on 13's cheeks trembled slightly. Big brother, aren't you too serious? Just listening to it was really scary, okay? Cindy glanced at him indifferently. I almost forgot. You can stay here safely. After all, you still have that small space. If Master needs anything, you must not be a burden. Do you understand? This was not a question, but an order. 13's face immediately fell. He did not forget. He had always remembered it. Oh, 13 struggled to ask. Big brother, do you mean you really want Master to do it himself? I think those people from Black Sword Sect are not easy to deal with. Shifeng sighed and patted him on the shoulder. Child, you are still young after all. In a while, you will know that the one who is really difficult to deal with is not Black Sword Sect, but our Master. When Master is about to flip out, don't hesitate. Don't hesitate. Just retreat. Retreat early to ensure your safety. 13 nodded as if he understood. If even Brother 10 said so, then perhaps he could be at ease? At this moment, Tianlei had already struck down heavily. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes, then tapped her toes and went straight for Tianlei. At the same time, a sword aura slashed down horizontally. Scarlet Heaven's sword, a bright rainbow light cut through all obstacles. Luo Yan and the others, who were watching from afar, were slightly shocked when they saw this scene. She actually wants to take the risk? Even Her Eminence has to be careful when dealing with the power of Tianlei. Does she want to die? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1900. The second layer of the blood sacrifice formation had been activated. Other than expanding the range of its attack, the Tianlei it summoned had also become stronger. This was also why they had initially wanted to join the fight, but in the end, they chose to stay where they were and observe. Who knew if Chu Luiyue and the rest would be killed by this Tianlei? However, Chu Luiyue's actions had exceeded their expectations. Luo Yin placed his hands behind his back and did not speak. He had personally witnessed the combat strength Chu Luyue had displayed in the god-slaying mound. He knew very well that this woman would never do something she was not confident in. If she dared to do this, it meant that she was confident. However, after all, the Black Sword sect was determined to kill her this time. They had already used all their strength and held nothing back. Could she really handle it? Besides, there was also Rong Xiu. Luo Yan's gaze turned slightly and looked at the tall white figure beside Chu Luyue. Rong Xiu did not move. It seemed that he was going to let her do whatever she wanted. Luo Yan felt inexplicably uneasy. Even at a time like this, these people were still so calm. Could it be that they still had some trump cards that they had not revealed? Let's watch first, Luo Yan ordered. The elders nodded when they heard this. Perhaps this battle would end very soon. Boom! An earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out. The terrifying sword Qi and Tianlei's power fiercely collided. Streaks of silver-white energy spread out in all directions. Chu Luyue's figure had long been swallowed by the dazzling light. Emoyan sneered and spat out a mouthful of blood. You overestimate yourself. He knew that Chu Luyue might have some ability, but the second layer of the blood sacrifice formation had been activated, and its power was shocking. Even if she had great ability, she would not be able to escape death this time. After killing Chu Luyue, the next one would be Rong Xiu. If he could kill both of them here, then from now on, not only would he be able to make up for his mistakes in front of the sect master, he would also be rewarded handsomely. This thought made Mo Yin faintly excited in his heart. He did not control Lan Qingfeng's matter well. The entire Peach Blossom dock was in an uproar. This was almost a capital offense. Only Rong Xiu and Chu Luyue could save him from this hopeless situation. Therefore, he decided to bet the entire Ink Sword sect. No matter how many casualties there were, as long as he could achieve the result he wanted, nothing else mattered. However, just as Mo Yin was waiting for Chu Luyue to die, a figure suddenly flew out from the lightning that filled the sky. Her figure was tall and slender. It was Chu Luyue. A sword aura shot up into the sky and forcefully split the ball of flickering white light in half. How is this possible? Mo Yin suddenly opened his eyes wide, his eyes filled with horror. The smugness that had just crept up from the corners of his eyes completely froze. He looked extremely embarrassed. However, he couldn't care less right now. There was only one thought left in his mind. Chu Luyue actually split the Tianlei in half. Isn't she a high deity? How can she have such powerful combat power? However, before he could figure it out, he saw the figure again moving against the lightning. She went straight for the rolling dark clouds that almost overturned half the sky. Countless people gasped in shock. There were still several bolts of heavenly lightning accumulated in the clouds. Wasn't she courting death by going there? In the eyes of ordinary people, Chu Luyue was simply tired of living by doing this. Who could survive if they rushed into the sea of lightning? However, Mo Yin looked at the figure from afar. Not only did he not heave a sigh of relief, but he also became more nervous. Ever since they decided to kill the two of them, Chu Luyue's series of actions had far exceeded their expectations. It was shocking. However, every time they thought that she was going to die, she always managed to survive. This time, would she also? As Mo Yin was thinking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Then, he looked over and saw a bolt of heavenly lightning falling from the sky. Boom! A huge sound spread far and wide, almost deafening. Heavenly lightning striking down was originally not something shocking. But the key point was that this bolt of heavenly lightning was actually flying towards Mo Yin and the rest. When he first saw it, Mo Yin was still in disbelief. It was only when the Tianlei rapidly approached, and the terrifying pressure crushed the void inch by inch that the people of Majin sect finally realized the danger. I don't know what method Chu Luyue used, but she actually made the lightning turn around and attack us. Mo Yin's heart was filled with shock and disbelief, and it quickly turned into anger and shock. It was like seeing a ghost. They were the ones who summoned the Tianlei. Why did it attack them in the end? What did Chu Luyue do? Quick! Activate the blood sacrifice array's defense. Mo Yin hurriedly urged. The Tianlei's strength was shocking. If he was at his peak, it would not be a problem. However, the blood sacrifice array consumed a lot of force and mental energy. After the series of torment earlier, he could no longer unleash his full strength. The only way was to activate the blood sacrifice array. However, just as he finished speaking, a painful groan was heard. Ah! This sound was short and hurried. It only appeared for a moment, and disappeared very quickly. Mo Yun's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately turned back to look. Beside the blood sacrifice array, one of the Magian sect guards spat out a mouthful of blood, due to exhaustion, and collapsed. However, before he hit the ground, a surge of energy suddenly surged out of the blood sacrifice array and swallowed him. That person felt that something was wrong, and immediately tried to break free and escape. However, all the energy in his body was already exhausted. He did not even have the strength to lift his arms. How could he escape from the blood sacrifice array? In the blink of an eye, his figure completely disappeared. Everyone fell silent. Their eyes were filled with panic. They were very clear that this person's outcome would be exactly the same as Mo Lin's. At this moment, a slight cracking sound could be heard from the blood sacrifice array. Mo Yun immediately focused his eyes and looked over, only to see that a crack had suddenly appeared on the huge blood sacrifice array. His heart sank. The blood sacrifice array's energy was not enough. To maintain the blood sacrifice array's operation, it required an endless supply of energy. The people present had basically exhausted all of their origin power. After this period of torment, they were just barely holding on at the moment. Now that one person had suddenly died, the entire blood sacrifice array would be affected. Why aren't they here yet? Mo Yun could not help but scold angrily. Before he came, he had already sent out the summons. Logically speaking, the people in charge of the Magian sect's reinforcements should have arrived by now. However, there was not a single person. Mo Yun looked in the direction of the city. It was empty, and there was no movement. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind. His pupils shrank. Something had happened to the Magian sect. Digression, not in the right state, staring at the computer for a few hours without writing. The 4th chapter is estimated to be at 7 o'clock, and the 5th chapter might be in arrears. Sorry everyone, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1901. Black Sword Sect had always been strict with their rules. Once they received an order, they would not disobey it for no reason. Now that so much time had passed, not a single person had arrived. It was certain that something had happened in the city. Mo Yun's chest seemed to be burning fiercely. He clenched his fists tightly, almost grinding his teeth to pieces. Who would attack Black Sword Sect at this time? It was obvious who it was. He suddenly turned around and looked at Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue. As if sensing his gaze, Rong Xiao, who had been looking at Chu Luiyue, suddenly looked over. The two of them looked at each other from a distance. With just one look, Mo Yun saw the undisguised sarcasm and indifference in Rong Xiao's deep eyes. Mo Yun's heart seemed to have been hit by something. It was them. In that moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Black Sword Sect had many people, and their strength was not weak. Even if a portion of them had died, the remaining people's combined battle power was still considerable. No matter what, it should not be that no one came. This could only prove the entire Black Sword Sect was probably in trouble now. But how did Rong Xiao do it? In the entire Peach Blossom Dock, Black Sword Sect dominated. Even the Yu family could not be compared to them. There was no reason for Black Sword Sect to lose. Mo Yun could not figure it out. He had always thought that Black Sword Sect had half of the Peach Blossom Dock under their control. But he did not expect such a thing to happen at such a crucial time. If no one came to help, then this blood sacrifice array would not be able to last much longer. Just as Mo Yun was thinking about this, another guard was drawn into the blood sacrifice array, because he had overdrawn his strength and could not hold on any longer. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a pile of bones. The power of the blood sacrifice array started to become disordered. Mo Yun started to worry. If this goes on, we won't be able to survive even before Chu Luiyue is killed. At this moment, he hated Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue to the core. These two people were truly sinister and cunning to the extreme. Now that he thought about it, he realized that something was amiss. Even Chu Liyue's escape out of the city from the start was part of her plan. However, it was clearly too late to think about this now. Rumble. Another Tianlei came crashing down, heading straight for the Black Sword sect disciples. Is that Chu Liyue really a freak? When the elders of the Nan family saw this, their expressions became shocked and solemn. She thought that Chu Liyue was dead for sure, but now, not only was she fine, she even killed her opponent. He had never seen anyone who could control Tianlei with such ease. Not even gods like them could do that. Luo Yin frowned. He had expected that Chu Liyue would not admit defeat so easily, but the scene before him still surprised him. In this battle with the Black Sword sect, it was hard to say who would win and who would lose. Right at this moment, a huge roar suddenly came from the horizon. Between heaven and earth, endless energy suddenly surged as if it was boiling. Not good. The barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove has collapsed. One of the elders exclaimed in surprise. In the distance, the enchantment that was glowing faintly in the sky suddenly shattered. The space started to compress. The energy of heaven and earth started to riot. Luo Yin made a prompt decision. Retreat. There were plenty of chances to kill Chu Liyue, but if she died here today, everything would be gone. Almost at the same time, a large patch of black suddenly appeared in the sky. It was a black hole that was formed when space collapsed. The ground shook violently. The undulating mountain range started to collapse. Countless cracks spread across the ground, and ravines appeared on the ground. For a moment, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in, as if it was the end of the world. Digression, I owe you, I'll make up for it later. I'll go straighten out my thoughts and plan. Love you mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1902. Luo Yan and the rest had intended to take advantage of the chaos to escape, but they were quickly pushed back by the raging energy. Looking at the sky that was collapsing inch by inch, listening to the constant cracking sounds coming from the ground, Luo Yin felt as if his body was being torn apart by countless forces. He hurriedly activated his force and set up a barrier around himself. However, that terrifying energy attack still sent chills down their spines. They even had to use all the energy in their bodies to barely stay where they were and not be swept away by the various forces. Luo Yin clenched his fists, his heart thumping so hard that it almost jumped out of his chest. Peach Blossom Cove's barrier had completely collapsed, and they had no way of getting out. Ink Sword Sect and Chu Liyue wanted everyone to die with them. At the same time, the people in the city also sensed that something was wrong, and they all looked up. Not good. Peach Blossom Cove's barrier has been destroyed. With that, countless people began to run out of Peach Blossom Cove in a panic. However, the energy between heaven and earth had completely gone out of control. Those who were slightly stronger could barely hold on, but those who were not were already showing all sorts of reactions. Their faces were pale, and their breathing was ragged. Some could not bear the pressure of the rapidly collapsing space, and kept spitting out blood. In short, the situation was terrible. Ink Sword Sect was littered with corpses. Previously, the people in the city had all gathered and rushed over, surrounding Ink Sword Sect. Both sides had erupted into an intense battle. There were countless casualties. The air was filled with a thick, suffocating smell of blood. Ink Sword Sect wants all of our lives. Duan Qingchuan was the first to react, and he shouted. Everyone else reacted. That's right. If Ink Sword Sect had not insisted on chasing after Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue, if they had not used that terrifying and strange Xian formation, if they had not ignored everything and triggered Tianlei, how could Peach Blossom Cove's barrier have collapsed? Everyone would not have fallen into such a dangerous situation. Intense anger and hatred filled everyone's hearts. The people of Ink Sword Sect, who were already at the end of their rope, sensed the tense and cold atmosphere, and they could not help but feel afraid. At this time, they also understood that Mo Yin and the rest had no intention of coming back to help them. He didn't even care about their lives. The barrier has collapsed. We are completely trapped here. Those who reacted first and tried to escape the Peach Blossom Cove were all stopped by the intertwining spatial turbulence. There were even some who were mercilessly swallowed by the collapsing void and never made it out again. Hearing those people's cries of pain before they died, the people behind them couldn't help but feel scared. It's over. Peach Blossom Dock is completely finished. We're all going to die here today. Someone muttered with a pale face, his eyes filled with despair. Even if I die today, I'll drag the Black Sword sect down with me. In the deathly silent crowd, someone suddenly yelled out in a stern voice. These words were like a falling star, instantly igniting a raging inferno. The battle between both sides became even more intense. The people of the Black Sword sect were already at a disadvantage. Now that the crowd was enraged, they suffered a crushing defeat. Not only the Black Sword sect, but the entire Peach Blossom Cove had fallen into chaos. On the streets, countless people were running back and forth in panic. All kinds of trampling, collisions, and killing occurred continuously. When they realized that the Peach Blossom Cove was in a life-and-death crisis, no one could remain calm. At first, there were still many people who tried to escape from the collapsing barrier. But after the first batch died, the people behind didn't dare to act rashly. They were running to live, not to die. More people had already chosen to give up in despair. In the courtyard of the Black Sword sect, Duan Qingchuan raised his saber and swung it down. At his feet, the corpses of the Black Sword sect people were strewn all over the ground. The sounds of killing continued in the surroundings. It was almost like hell on earth. Brother Duan, the barrier has collapsed. Shouldn't we think of a way to retreat? Someone asked anxiously. Many people looked over when they heard that. After this incident, many people had already subconsciously regarded Duan Qingchuan as their backbone. So now that something had happened, they also subconsciously asked for Duan Qingchuan's opinion. Duan Qingchuan swung his saber and stabbed a fleeing Black Sword sect person to death. Warm blood splattered on his face. He raised his arm and wiped the blood away with his sleeve. Retreat. How? To where? His voice was very calm. Those who had stayed in the Peach Blossom Cove long enough would know how terrible the situation was. Although he had been on the Black Sword sect's side, he wasn't completely ignorant of the situation outside. Those who had tried to escape had all failed. Among them, there was no lack of powerful people. All of this proved that it was impossible for them to leave this place safely. Then we're just going to wait for death here. Yeah, we can't be completely helpless, right? There are so many people in the Peach Blossom Cove. Why don't we join forces? Maybe we'll have a chance. Seeing that Duan Qingchuan's attitude wasn't optimistic, many people panicked. For a moment, everyone was discussing. Although some of them were already prepared to die, most of them still hoped to survive safely. Duan Qingchuan suddenly raised his head and looked at the horizon. If someone can repair the barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove, maybe we'll have a chance to survive. Everyone fell into a dead silence. How could they not have thought of this? But the key was, this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove wasn't man-made. It existed naturally. For thousands of years, the Peach Blossom Cove had never been occupied by anyone because of the existence of this barrier. Now that the barrier had collapsed, the void had collapsed, and the entire Peach Blossom Cove was in chaos. Who could repair the barrier? Everyone was just a mayfly at this moment. They couldn't even struggle. Who could save them? The sky was still collapsing, and the ground was shaking violently. The space was shrinking and squeezing inwards. Everyone who was in the middle of it could already feel the suffocating pressure. More and more people couldn't withstand the pressure, and gradually collapsed. Most of the people from the Black Sword sect had been killed. But what was the use of that? If the Peach Blossom Cove was destroyed, all of them would die here. Duan Qingchuan held the long saber in his hand tightly. His lips were pursed as he looked at the distant sky, as if he was waiting for something. Boom! A loud sound was suddenly heard. Then, a faint blue flame shot up into the sky. It was a cluster of flames that suddenly surged out from under the crumbling mountain range. Mo Yin and the rest had seen this scene too many times before. so they didn't take it to heart. However, before they could react, the ravines on the ground of the mountain range exploded like a string of cannons. Boom! Boom! Demonic and crazy flames covered the sky and covered the earth. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1903. Everyone was stunned. This flame. Isn't it too much? On the mountain, in the forest, and in the valley, even in every corner of the city, there were flames rushing out rapidly. The entire Peach Blossom Dock was engulfed in a sea of fire. The dark and gloomy sky was now illuminated by endless flames. The blue flames leaped and roasted the hearts of countless people. How could this be? How could this be? There is such a hidden danger under the Peach Blossom Dock? What are those flames? Countless questions lingered in the minds of the people, causing them to panic. The aura of this flame was tyrannical and extremely powerful. The Peach Blossom Dock's barrier had collapsed, and no one could enter or leave. Once the flames spread out, none of them would be able to escape. The discussion gradually died down. Someone was sobbing. Everyone in the city was in complete despair. Now all they could do was wait for their deaths. Chi. A stream of light suddenly flew out from a cluster of flames. The stream of light drew a straight line in the sky and headed straight for Chu Luyue. Many people saw this scene. What is that? I don't know. I didn't see it clearly. It seems like this is not the first time she has done this. Something seemed to fly out from the flames on the mountains outside the city. She seems to be looking for something in the flames. I remember now. The people of Black Sword Sect were on guard against Lan Qingfeng. They seemed to be looking for something too. Everyone in Peach Blossom Dock knew what had happened during this period of time. Therefore, when someone reminded them, many people immediately connected the dots. With so many pairs of eyes watching, this conjecture could almost be completely confirmed. But what was that thing that flew out from the flames? Countless people looked at Chu Luyue. Of course, Chu Luyue knew what it was. When the stream of light flew over from below, she held her breath and held the black shield in her hand tightly. Crack! A familiar cracking sound was heard. Then, a piece of rust peeled off from the shield. A corner of the secret text was gradually revealed. Buzz! The stream of light flew to Chu Luyue. A thin blue crystal gently covered the area where the rust had peeled off. The sparkling light gradually shrouded it. The shield in her hand became heavier and heavier. However, this was just the beginning. Chi! Chi! The sound of air being torn apart came from all directions. Chu Luyue hovered in the air and looked down. Countless flames had already ignited in the huge Peach Blossom Dock. Pieces of thin crystals flew out of it, wrapped in a brilliant light. The black shield seemed to be summoned by some kind of power, and began to tremble. Chu Luyue's hand was already numb, and her knuckles had turned white from using too much strength. However, she still used all her strength to hold the black shield firmly in her hands. Crisp cracking sounds could be heard. Pieces after pieces of rust peeled off the shield. At the same time, a terrifyingly powerful pressure. Puff! The blood in Chu Luyue's body flowed rapidly, and her force was almost boiling. She suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face instantly turned incomparably pale. The bright red blood stain at the corner of her lips made her look even more haggard. The slight trembling of her body showed that she was under tremendous pressure at this moment. However, her black eyes were cold and gloomy. She was actually exceptionally calm. His eyes were burning with a raging fighting spirit. Countless streams of light came from all directions of the Peach Blossom Dock. Bang! The golden armor on Chu Luyue's body suddenly shattered under the impact of the surrounding spatial turbulence. Digression, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1904. Rong Xiu's expression froze, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He bent his long legs, and was about to go forward when he saw the black shield in front of Chu Luyue, which was already covered by a lustrous light, and he stopped in his tracks. At this moment, it was useless for anyone to go over. She could only rely on herself. Seeing this, the other members of the 13U sect also looked worried. Master. Cinny raised his hand and signaled for them to calm down. Big brother. This time, not only the 13 sect members, but even Sanson was a little hesitant. Master's situation didn't look too good, however. Cinny's expression was calm and didn't allow any disobedience. Although they were anxious, they could only stay where they were obediently. Hiss! Sanson wanted to say something, but he suddenly frowned. Third brother, what's wrong? 13 hurriedly asked. Sanson waved his hand, and his chubby face scrunched up. Nothing. It's just that small space is about to break. Chi. As soon as he said that, a stream of light flew up from the direction of Qingshui Cliff. That thin layer of blue was actually wrapped in a blazing flame and landed on the shallow spot where the rust had peeled off. Boom! Qingshui Cliff also started to collapse, as if it was being squeezed by the surrounding void turbulence. Large pieces of rock fell from the mountain. A loud sound was heard. Sanson's eyelids twitched violently, and he felt extremely pained. My baby! If that small space was destroyed, the loss would be immeasurable. As soon as he thought of this, his heart ached so much that it twitched. However, at this moment Chu Luiyue, who was suspended in midair, suddenly raised his hand. A silver-red divine realm flew out like a heavenly river pouring down. In the blink of an eye, it covered Qingshui Cliff. The fine light flickered quietly, and it was especially eye-catching in this chaotic situation. Sanson's eyes instantly lit up. Master had actually personally taken action to protect that small space of his. Master is too good. Whoa! Sanson's eyes were almost brimming with tears. First it was despair, then it was hope. This feeling of rising and falling was simply too satisfying. His little heart couldn't take it anymore, okay? Cinny glanced at him indifferently and raised his eyebrows slightly, but he didn't say anything. So many mountains had been destroyed previously, but there was no movement on Master's side. However, just as there was movement on Qingshui Cliff, Master chose to attack without hesitation. This could only prove that Master was also very reluctant to part of that small space. However, seeing how agitated Sanson was, Cinny decided to be kind and not expose her. Master's God's realm. Wu Yao stared at the divine domain that was slowly flowing like a waterfall as he muttered to himself. Fifth brother, you feel it too? Yu nodded. I have the same feeling. When Qingshui of Qingshui, to cliff of the cliffs Qingjin, SS. This was not the first time they had seen their master display his divine domain, but this time, it seemed like his aura and pressure were the strongest. God's domain can become stronger? 13 was at a loss. Don't exalted gods only have a chance to improve their god's realm after breaking through to venerable god? He was only a rank 7 warrior now, and was still quite a distance away from exalted gods. Therefore, he had heard a lot about exalted gods from Xin Yi and the others. That's true for ordinary people, but our master isn't ordinary. Shifeng sighed, and then looked aggrieved. It's a pity that my vegetable garden, I'm afraid it's going to be destroyed again. On the first day he came to Peach Blossom Cove, he started to plant vegetables in the backyard excitedly. He thought that everything would go smoothly this time, but who knew that such a big thing would happen again? That was great. He couldn't eat the vegetables that he had painstakingly grown again. Shifeng felt very sad when he thought of what had happened in the past few days. After a rough calculation, he realized that it had been a long time since he had a proper meal. Everyone looked at him. At this time, everyone in Peach Blossom Cove was in danger and was afraid of dying here. Shifeng was the only one who was still thinking about those dishes. However, they quickly retracted their gazes. Shifeng had always been like this, and they were already used to it. They looked at Chu Luiyue in unison. They didn't know if their master could really deal with the situation in front of them alone this time. This Shengguanyu, there's really a problem. The elders of the Nan family became even more flustered when they saw the flames that were ignited everywhere. If Peach Blossom Cove is completely destroyed, does she think she can survive alone? They thought that the people of Black Sword Sect were crazy enough, but they didn't expect her to be even crazier. They wanted to drag everyone down with them. Luo Yan's face was gloomy as he suddenly took out a red scroll. The scroll was shrouded in a layer of faint light. A heavy pressure was emitted from it. When the people around him saw the scroll, they were all shocked. Flowing Cloud Flying Diagram. The Flowing Cloud Flying Diagram was a venerable divine artifact and the treasure of the Nan family. Unlike other venerable divine artifacts that were used for killing and were extremely aggressive, this treasure only had one use. No matter who the holder was, they could use it to forcefully open up space and teleport the holder to another place in an extremely short amount of time. In layman's terms, this was a teleportation formation that could be carried around. Most people might think that this thing was very ordinary and nothing special. However, only those who truly understood its power would know how powerful this thing was. During ordinary battles, this flowing cloud flying diagram might not be of use, but at critical moments, it could save one's life. Just like now, the void of Peach Blossom Cove collapsed and the barrier collapsed. The energy of heaven and earth was almost completely out of control. Luo Yan and the others had already tried to leave, but they all failed. Now their only hope was the flowing cloud flying diagram. But wasn't this thing with young master? An elder said in confusion. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly realized that he had said something wrong and hurriedly stopped. He looked at Luo Yan nervously. Luo Yan's face was expressionless. Before we set off, young master specially gave this thing to me for safekeeping. Originally, I wanted to return to the Nan family directly after killing Rong Xiao and Shang Guanyu. The elders fell silent. They looked at each other with their eyes and nose. In fact, they didn't believe Luo Yan's words. The flowing cloud flying diagram had a very high status in the Nan family. It had always been safeguarded by the patriarch. This time, it was likely that the patriarch had secretly given the item to the eldest young master to increase his leverage. Even if he couldn't win, he could escape. Nan Yuxing should know the importance of this treasure. Why would he give it to Luo Yan for no reason? It was obvious that he could use it himself, and it could even protect his own life. But at this time, these questions were obviously unsolvable. Swoosh! Luo Yan waved his hand, and the flowing cloud flying diagram quickly unfolded. Digression. There's the last update at 7 o'clock. Sorry, I'm trying my best to adjust these few days in February, so that I can resume the update as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1905. A beam of brilliant light flew out from the crimson flowing clouds flying diagram. Then the light slowly spread out. Everywhere it passed, the space froze. The light rippled like water, and without anyone noticing, it had already connected to the void on the other side. From afar, it looked like a door with light flowing and floating quietly. Luo Yan made up his mind and walked forward. As long as he could use the flowing clouds flying diagram to leave this place, everything else would be easy. His speed was very fast. With a single step, he stepped into the swaying waves. The surrounding spatial turbulence seemed to have been isolated at this moment. Luo Yan pursed his lips and calmed down. The few elders standing behind him also became slightly excited when they saw this situation. The flowing clouds flying diagram was indeed worthy of its reputation. It seemed that they could really leave this place with this thing. However, at this moment, a sword aura suddenly broke through the air. Luo Yan knew that something was wrong and could only dodge. The half of his leg that had just stepped into the flowing clouds flying diagram was forced to withdraw again. Chi! A sharp and cold aura flashed in front of him. Luo Yan did not even have time to set up a barrier in front of him, and a deep wound had already appeared on his face. A stinging pain came. Luo Yan's heart beat violently, almost jumping out of his chest. If his reaction had been half a second slower, then this sword chi might have sliced off his head. After the shock, there was a monstrous anger. He raised his head and looked at Chu Luyue with hatred. She could not even protect herself, but she still had the mood to attack them. Shang Guanyu, if you want to die, no one will stop you. Don't drag everyone down with you. Luo Yan shouted in a deep voice. The deep and cold voice spread far and wide in the sky. Chu Liyue's lips curled into an extremely cold smile. Luo Yan, I can't agree with your words. From the beginning to the end, I have never thought of dying. I just don't want to see the person who harmed me live well. Luo Yan was furious and was about to refute when a strange voice suddenly sounded in his ears. He turned his head and his eyes widened in shock. Unknowingly, a layer of reddish gold flames had covered the flowing cloud flying diagram. At this moment, it was burning brightly. Under the influence of the flames, the spreading layer of light gradually dimmed. That was the space leading to the exit, which was gradually being sealed. Luo Yan almost couldn't breathe. This woman is so ruthless. She was the one who caused the current situation, yet she didn't allow anyone to leave. She was really crazy. However, at the same time, a deeper question suddenly appeared in his mind. The flowing cloud flying diagram was a genuine venerable artifact. Logically speaking, Chu Liyue's strength alone should not have been able to deal any fatal damage to it. What's that? An elder behind him suddenly saw something and exclaimed in shock. Luo Yan followed his line of sight and saw that there seemed to be a transparent flame within the burning reddish gold flames. The power of the two layers of pressure was far beyond their imagination. This is the karmic fire of the heavenly square cauldron? Luo Yan was experienced and knowledgeable, so he quickly recognized the origin of the transparent flame. When he thought of this, his heart instantly sank. The flowing cloud flying diagram was actually one of the 10 great divine artifacts. However, compared to the heavenly square cauldron, it was still slightly inferior. After all, it was not used for battle. To put it bluntly, it was a trump card used to escape and save one's life. However, the heavenly square cauldron was different. At this moment, the power of both sides was intertwined, and the difference was immediately apparent. What is she trying to do? Luo Yan's heart was filled with hatred. However, Chu Liyue's attention did not seem to be on this side anymore. She kept the red cloud sword in her hand and held the black shield with both hands. Most of the rust on it had already peeled off, and the heavy pressure was almost suffocating her. The lustrous glow enveloped it, and the engravings on it were faintly discernible. Its weight was increasing at an unimaginable speed, so much so that Chu Liyue could no longer hold the shield with one hand. She had to use both hands. Vigorous force continuously surged out from her dantian and into her limbs and bones. The force was burning wildly. Fine beads of sweat continuously appeared on her full and smooth forehead. Her face grew paler and paler, and only her pair of dark eyes seemed to be burning with flames. The sky had almost completely collapsed, and the ground was filled with ravines. Everywhere was filled with burning flames. At a glance, it was like purgatory. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and held her breath. The buzzing sound from the black shield reverberated in her ears, almost causing the force in her body to boil. On the other side, the people of Ink Sword Sect were also in a terrible situation. Chu Liyue had forcefully mobilized the Tianlei to bombard them, and each strike was fatal. The people of Ink Sword Sect had already depleted their strength and spirit due to the blood sacrifice formation. How could they withstand such a terrifying attack now? After a series of attacks, more than half of Ink Sword Sect was dead or injured. The huge blood sacrifice formation also started to churn violently, inch by inch. Mo Yin knew that there was nothing he could do. His body trembled, and his heart was filled with resentment. Boom! Finally, the blood sacrifice formation completely collapsed. The people of Ink Sword Sect standing at the edge could not escape in time, and were all swallowed by the violent blood qi and energy. Mo Yin also suffered a great impact, and his body flew backward. Finally, his eyes were completely filled with a scarlet color. Just when everyone thought that he was done for, they suddenly saw him forcefully stabilize his body. The next moment, he looked at Chu Liyue. "Shengguan, you forced me to do it this time." His cold and gloomy voice was filled with a violent and cold killing intent. At the same time, a totem suddenly flashed between his eyebrows. Chu Liyue looked up, and her eyes were instantly covered with a thick layer of frost. She could not be more familiar with that totem. Black Demon Cave. The so-called Ink Sword Sect clearly had an extremely close relationship with Black Demon Cave. Black Demon Cave sent you here? Mo Yin sneered. But he didn't reply as he quickly ran toward Chu Luyue. The surrounding heaven and earth energy suddenly gathered toward him like crazy. In just a few breaths' time, his strength had recovered to the peak of Supreme God. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1906. After letting go of his last line, Mo Yin no longer had any scruples, as he frantically devoured the surrounding energy to forcefully raise his own strength. Seeing that Black Sword sect was unreliable, he could only rely on himself. Even though the sect leader had repeatedly warned him to be careful and not reveal his identity unless it was absolutely necessary. But now he had no other choice. If this went on, what awaited him was only death. Today, even if he were to die, he would definitely drag these people down with him. However, before Mo Yin could reach Chu Luyue, he was stopped by someone. A tall and slender figure broke through the air and blocked Mo Yin's path in the blink of an eye. It was Rong Xiu. Looking at that noble and devilish face, Mo Yin's heart was filled with hatred. Even at this time, this man's expression was still so calm and composed. It was as if there was nothing in this world that could make him nervous or fearful. The more he was like this, the more intense the emotions in Mo Yin's heart became. Based on what? Based on what, after this battle, those from Black Sword sect were either dead or injured while these people on the other side were not affected at all. Rong Xiu, you are no match for me. Mo Yin shouted sternly. At this point, Mo Yin could see that Peach Blossom Cove was about to be completely destroyed. Everything that they had spent countless manpower and resources to prepare in the past 2 years would all turn to nothing. Even the countless cultivators here would have to pay with their lives. Mo Yin naturally did not care about the lives of those people, but he cared about himself. At this time, he had already used a secret technique to forcefully recover and raise his strength. But in the face of the collapsing void and the rampant turbulence, he still felt helpless. And all of this was Chu Luyue's fault. If she had not summoned so many flames, if she had not forcefully controlled the Tianlei, if she had not, at this time, Mo Yin had forgotten that the Nan family and Black Sword sect were the first to act. If they had not insisted on pursuing Chu Luyue and the rest and paid a huge price for it, things would not have turned out this way. However, a person like him would never reflect on himself. Therefore, he still blamed all his resentment on Chu Luyue and the others. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh, it seemed that the Black Demon Cave had not learned their lesson. His tone was light, and there was even a slight smile on his lips. His entire person looked elegant, noble and elegant. However, when Mo Yin looked at that pair of eyes that were as deep as a pool, he suddenly quivered. He suddenly recalled a rumor from a few years ago. It was not accurate to say that it was a rumor, because that incident had really happened. However, he had never personally experienced it, and had only heard about it from others. It was said that a few years ago, Rong Xiu had gone to the Black Demon Cave alone, and directly attacked their lair. The Black Demon Cave suffered heavy losses in that battle. Not long after that incident, they even chose to live in seclusion. Although Mo Yin knew that the reason why the sect leader had made such a choice was not entirely because of Rong Xiu, he had to admit that these matters had a significant impact on each other. Especially, at that time, Rong Xiu had indeed killed many people from the Black Demon Cave. Among them, there was no lack of people of high status and power. Mo Yin happened to be out at that time, and had just avoided this fierce battle. Therefore, many details about that battle were heard from his fellow sect members one after another. This matter was almost a taboo in the Black Demon Cave. Many people were still afraid when they mentioned the scene of that man killing his way into the Black Demon Cave alone. Mo Yin had not seen Rong Xiu with his own eyes. Otherwise, he would not have known the identities of Rong Xiu and Chu Luyue only after the Nan family came to interrogate him. Because he had not personally experienced it, he had always maintained some doubts about these claims. Even after knowing Rong Xiu's identity, his first thought was to kill him. Until now, he and Rong Xiu faced each other face to face. When he met the man's cold and indifferent eyes, he suddenly remembered all the things he had heard before. Rong Xiao, he really had great strength. Mo Yun's throat was a little tight. He was not stupid. On the contrary, in most cases he was very astute and intelligent. Otherwise, the higher-ups would not have sent him here to establish the Black Sword sect and be in charge of many things here. He intuitively felt a fatal danger. And this danger came from Rong Xiao. Qi. Rong Xiao gently raised his wrist, and a cluster of golden flames gushed out from his palm, scorching, burning. At the same time, the incomparably wild energy in the surroundings began to obediently surge towards his flames, including the energy that was rushing towards Mo Yun. It was forcibly snatched away halfway. Mo Yun's face was ashen, but his heart was uneasy. From this move alone, he could tell that Rong Xiao's strength was not inferior to his, and was even stronger. Could not go head-to-head with Rong Xiao. Mo Yun made a prompt decision, and with a sidestep, he planned to go around Rong Xiao and attack Chu Luo first. However, how would Rong Xiao give him this chance? Swoosh! His slender and well-proportioned fingers waved gently. The incomparably bright golden flames transformed into a long whip and went straight towards Mo Yun. Before Mo Yun could escape, he felt a golden light flash in front of his eyes. Then a burning pain came from his ankle. He looked down in panic and saw that one of his calves had been tightly bound by the flames. The blazing flames burned fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, his trousers had turned into ashes. The intense burning pain came quickly. Mo Yun's face turned pale. He was a god expert, and ordinary flames could not get close to him. But Rong Xiao's fire was also very powerful. Wrapping around his ankle was not the most important thing. What made Mo Yun's heart tremble the most was that after the flame wrapped around him, the force in his body seemed to have been suppressed and sealed by some kind of power. It could not be mobilized at all. Without being able to use force, no matter how powerful a cultivator was, he could not unleash his strength. Mo Yun was shocked and furious. Wasn't Rong Xiao also a god like him? But why was the difference in strength between the two of them so great? In comparison, Rong Xiao could practically crush him easily. Just as Mo Yun was thinking about this question, Rong Xiao had already lashed out with his whip. Smack! Mo Yun's body flew out uncontrollably. He crashed heavily on a mountain peak. Bam! Rumble! Accompanied by these two sounds, that mountain peak actually collapsed directly after receiving this powerful impact. Countless huge rocks rolled down. Mo Yun's body was drowned in it very quickly. Rong Xiao's eyes were cold. Don't delay my violators. This is the consequence. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1907. A cold and deep voice spread between heaven and earth, landing clearly in everyone's ears. The people of Black Sword sect were basically all dead. As for the people of Nan family, after hearing this, they felt that it was extremely ear-piercing. These words were clearly meant for them to hear. It was fine if Rong Xiao did not make a move, but once he did, he used a killing move right away. He was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Luo Yan was filled with rage as he looked at the flowing cloud flying diagram that was still burning in front of him. The flowing cloud flying diagram was a venerable divine weapon and would not be damaged easily. Therefore, he was not worried that Chu Liuyue's flames would destroy it. However, he knew very well that with Chu Liuyue's interference, they would definitely not be able to use the flowing cloud flying diagram to leave this place. The space in all directions was crazily squeezing towards the center. If this continued, the entire Peach Blossom dock would completely collapse before long. I'm afraid we won't be able to get out. The expressions of the elders turned extremely ugly. Before they came, they had never expected things to develop to this stage. Putting aside Nan Yuxing's death, all of them would probably be buried here as well. Even Mo Yin is not a match for Rong Xiao. This was not to say that they were weaker than Mo Yin. It was just that when Mo Yin attacked earlier, the strength that he displayed was already extremely strong. Moreover, he went with great determination at that time, almost cutting off all means of retreat. Even so, He only managed to exchange one move with Rongxiao. How good would the situation be for the rest of them? I think Rongxiao's strength has clearly surpassed that of an ordinary venerable god. An elder gritted his teeth and said, but his aura is indeed that of a venerable god. Another elder said hesitantly, perhaps he borrowed some external power? The elders had different opinions. However, they also knew that it was useless even if they knew this at this time. Luo Yin suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. Inch by inch, the ground collapsed and large black holes spread out. It was like a giant beast opening its bloody mouth to devour everything. Countless surging dark clouds had already been devoured by now. Only a few strands of Tianlei were still wandering around. It was Tianlei, who had been summoned by the blood sacrifice array. Before all of them landed, the blood sacrifice array had already collapsed. All that was left were the Tianlei, which wandered about in the sky uncontrollably. At this moment, as if affected by the spatial compression, the Tianlei began to converge towards the center. What was even more surprising was that they seemed to be merging with each other. The most important thing was that they were gathered in the air above Chu Liyue's head. Looking at this scene, Luo Yin suddenly muttered, so what if you're a venerable god? Can he compete with the heavenly Tao? The elders were stunned when they heard this. Heavenly Tao? What did he mean by that? They looked at each other and subconsciously followed Luo Yan's line of sight. The wind howled, and the energy was rampant. Everything looked the same. However, Tianlei in the sky was converging and merging. A dazzling light suddenly surged out from within. The elders all sucked in a breath of cold air. That was God-destroying tribulation. As the name suggested, the God-destroying tribulation was a heavenly tribulation used to destroy a venerable god. Legend had it that the God-destroying tribulation was dazzling and was born from the heavenly Tao. It was extremely powerful. Whenever it descended, it would be a calamity that could destroy the world. However, the God-destroying tribulation was extremely rare. In the world of divine ruins, there might not be a single person who could summon it in 1,000 years. Therefore, most people had only heard of it in rumors and did not have a deep understanding of it. In their opinion, this was indeed a phenomenon that only existed in ancient books. Therefore, when this God-destroying tribulation appeared, even Luo Yin looked at it for a long time before he dared to confirm it. This was the legendary God-destroying tribulation. Moreover, the person who was going to destroy it was Chu Liyue. It's really the God-destroying tribulation. The elders were all dumbfounded, their faces filled with shock. But that's not right. Isn't the God-destroying tribulation something that only venerable gods can summon? Sheng Guanyu is the venerable god. How could it be Rongxiao who summoned it? No, it's Sheng Guanyu. Can't you see that the God-destroying tribulation is gathering above her head? Heavens! Is this really the God-destroying tribulation coming for her? How could a mere venerable god? Could it be because of the mountain fire? The Nan family was not the only one who was puzzled. At the same time, countless cultivators who were watching the situation in Peach Blossom Dock were also stunned. Some of them had sharp eyes and immediately recognized that it was the God-destroying tribulation. The news quickly spread among the crowd. Everyone was stunned on the spot. They did not expect that Chu Liyue would summon a God-destroying tribulation at such a critical moment. This was one disaster after another. It's over. It's completely over this time. Countless people were filled with despair and had already given up. Mo Yin struggled out of the pile of rocks. His body was already covered in wounds. He did not have time to be resentful. He looked up at the sky and saw the God-destroying tribulation that was gathering. His eyes widened and his body trembled. Once the deity-destroying tribulation descended, all of them would most likely die. He clenched his teeth, and a look of determination flashed in his eyes. Then, a cloud of black mist suddenly spread out from his body. The totem between his eyebrows became brighter and weirder. A vast and mighty aura descended from the sky. Chu Liyue looked up. The gorgeous Tianlei was still gathering power, and it would descend at any time to judge her. She clenched the black gambling token in her hand. What was this? How could it summon the god-destroying tribulation? Boom! Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the god-destroying tribulation had already descended. The biting cold aura instantly cut countless wounds on Chuliu's body. However, at this moment, the sound of a zither rang out from within her body. Digression 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1908. Chu Luyue felt that there were two forces fighting each other inside and outside her body, and her physical body was the battlefield. The sound of the zither rang out. An endless surging force rushed out, quickly pouring into her limbs and bones, nourishing her injuries. Those bloody wounds began to heal and scab at an astonishing speed. But as the pressure of the god-destroying tribulation continued to increase, some bloody wounds ruptured. One side was destroying, and the other side was repairing. Chu Luyue's body endured these two forces at the same time, and soon became a bloody person. She wore a red dress, and dark red blood gushed out from her body, quickly disappearing on her clothes. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to see anything. Only her increasingly pale face showed what kind of terrible torture she was suffering at this moment. Chu Luyue's two hands had long lost feeling. At this moment, she was just relying on the last bit of willpower to barely hold on, holding the black shield in her hand tightly. The rust on it had almost completely peeled off. Countless faint blue crystals covered it. A faint glow almost enveloped the entire shield. The secret text engraved on it was faintly discernible. Sensing this movement, Rongxiu looked up. When he saw the gorgeous and brilliant god-destroying tribulation appear, he narrowed his eyes slightly, and a look of deep thought flashed across his eyes. It actually directly summoned the god-destroying tribulation. He put one hand behind his back and gently curled up, but his feet didn't move. From the looks of it, he was planning to wait and see. Big brother, that's the god-destroying tribulation? Sansan widened her small eyes in shock and asked in disbelief. Cindy nodded, although it was his first time seeing it, but with this appearance and state, there was no doubt that it was the god-destroying tribulation. Hiss! Seeing his affirmative nod, Sansan sucked in a breath of cold air. But isn't Master just a high god now? How can he summon the god-destroying tribulation? Wu Yao and the others also looked over nervously. Previously, their big brother had told them to wait patiently, and they had done so. But now, they really couldn't calm down. God-destroying tribulation? This was because the heavenly Tao had sensed a threat and wanted to annihilate him. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know how terrifying this was. No matter how powerful Master was, his own realm was still there. Rumor has it that only 10 to 20% of the god annihilation tribulations can safely pass through them. Master is a high deity. What should we do? Sun Yi's brows quickly furrowed, but he quickly relaxed. He paused for a moment before saying, the deity annihilation tribulation is indeed dangerous. However, those who can pass the deity annihilation tribulation will all become powerful figures in the world. This was an opportunity that thousands of cultivators could only dream of in their entire lives. Master was still a high deity, but he was able to summon the deity annihilation tribulation. This showed how strong his potential was. For Master to encounter such an opportunity, we should be happy for Master. The remaining people smiled bitterly. They naturally understood what Sun Yi was saying. But the key point was, what if Master couldn't get through it? One had to know that even the most powerful supreme gods might not be able to survive the god annihilation tribulation, let alone Master. It wasn't that they didn't believe in their Master's strength. It was just, this matter was too outrageous. Even the 13U sect, who had always thought highly of their Master, panicked at this moment. They really didn't dare to make this bet. Little Hachi suddenly stretched. Since Big Brother has said so, let's not worry for nothing. Besides, if Master really can't get through it, we can just go with him. What's there to be conflicted about? In any case, she was very open-minded. Her life was Master's. As long as Master was here, she would be here. If something happened to Master, she would follow without hesitation. These words didn't sound good. It could even be said that they were very depressing. However, The miraculous thing was that after hearing little Hachi's words, the remaining people were instantly less nervous. It made sense. The worst outcome was nothing more than this. It wasn't like they hadn't experienced it before. There was nothing to be afraid of if the same thing happened again. Besides, Master had many trump cards. Perhaps he could really win? Chu Luiyue didn't know what everyone was thinking. At this moment, all her attention was placed on the black shield in front of her, and the God-destroying tribulation above it. Under the pincer attack from both sides, she felt as if her whole body was being torn apart. Terrifying energy rushed back and forth. The pressure of the God-destroying tribulation was getting heavier and heavier. The zither music in her body was also getting more and more desolate. Chu Luiyue's ears were filled with a roar. She could no longer hear any sound from the outside world. Faint luster kept flickering in front of her eyes. The weight on both of her hands kept increasing. She could only clench her teeth and stare. Crack. Finally, the last piece of rust on the black shield was peeled off. Then, the last piece of faint blue crystal flew out from the city below. It gently covered it. At this moment, the entire peach blossom dock was in a mess. Countless faint blue flames were burning all over the peach blossom dock. The entire city had almost turned into a sea of fire. Chu Luiyue stood in midair. She could even feel the burning aura in the air. When the last piece of thin crystal flew over and covered it perfectly, Chu Luiyue could clearly hear a chanting sound that seemed to come from an ancient time and space. Her mind was shocked. Then, the secret text on the entire black shield finally appeared completely. At the same time, all the Tianlei in the sky had gathered. It condensed into an incomparably gorgeous God-destroying tribulation. When the luster on the black shield gradually dissipated, the God-destroying tribulation also crashed down. The target was Chu Luiyue. Digression. At about 6:30 p.m. mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1909. Reddish gold flames instantly ignited around Chu Luiyue. However, the God-destroying tribulation was extremely fast. In just an instant, Chu Luiyue's figure was devoured. Boom! Endless resplendent streams of light shot out in all directions. Even the silver-red god realm that Chu Luiyue displayed at the start was affected as well, and it was instantly scattered into pieces. Below, the mountain range that was already in a mess started to collapse again at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, it was razed to the ground. Cindy quickly set up a green barrier in front of him and shouted at the same time, "Retreat!" Hearing his order, the 13 Yu guards instinctively retreated. Even so, they still suffered a great impact. The colorful streams of light flew over and collided with the barrier that Sin Yi had set up. They silently devoured each other and killed each other crazily. Sin Yi was the first to bear the brunt. His chest shook, and blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Big Brother! Sanson and the others were shocked. In their impression, Big Brother was almost invincible. He had never been in such a sorry state. However, this was merely the aftermath of the God-destroying tribulation. Their master, who was facing the full-force attack of the God-destroying tribulation, was in even more danger. Cindy forcefully swallowed the taste of blood that surged up his mouth. Without stopping, he continued to lead everyone in retreat. Danger! Almost at the same time, Luo Yan and the others on the other side also sensed that something was wrong. Luo Yan shouted and immediately retreated. However, an elder chose to go forward. Flowing cloud flying diagram. This was the treasure of the Nan family. If it was lost, however, just as his hand touched the burning flowing cloud flying diagram, a colorful stream of light suddenly flew behind him. Luo Yan and the others' expressions changed. Dodge! That elder also felt a gust of cold wind coming from behind him. He knew that something was wrong, and immediately grabbed the flowing cloud flying diagram and fled. However, it was still too late. That stream of light was simply too fast. He had just taken a step when the colorful stream of light behind him directly pierced through his chest. Blood splattered everywhere. The warm and sweet blood even splashed onto the faces and bodies of Luo Yan and the others. Their hearts were filled with shock, and they were all stunned. The elder threw out the flowing cloud flying diagram with great difficulty, then spat out 2 words with great difficulty. Hurry, go! Luo Yan subconsciously borrowed the flowing cloud flying diagram. The scarlet gold flames and the transparent flames intertwined and enveloped him. It was boiling hot to the touch. Fortunately, the flowing cloud flying diagram was also one of the 10 great saint artifacts. Although the flames could destroy the spatial tunnel it created, it would not cause fatal damage to the diagram itself. Furthermore, Luo Yan himself was a god. With a thought, a layer of silver armor quickly covered his arm. He clenched the flowing cloud flying diagram tightly in his hand and retreated at full speed at the same time. The other elders didn't have time to say anything and could only follow closely behind. By the time they managed to dodge the attack of the colorful light, they had already flown quite a distance away. After making sure that he had avoided the fatal threat, Luo Yan stopped and looked back again. He saw the body of the elder from the Nan clan explode. A terrifying energy wave came crashing down, instantly crushing him into dust. His body and soul were destroyed. He didn't even have time to cry out in pain. Luo Yan's heart was beating violently. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and his temples were throbbing. The scene in front of him had a huge impact on him. If they were a step too late just now, then the consequences were simply unimaginable. Luo Yan had been a god for many years. It had been too long since he felt such a fatal threat of death. The 3 elders standing beside him were all stunned at this time. A god powerhouse was gone just like that. The power of the god-destroying tribulation was so terrifying. Even a scattered aftershock had such a terrifying power. Then, Chu Luiyue, who was at the center and endured the most pressure of the god-destroying tribulation, would die without a doubt. Mo Yun was originally hiding in a pile of rocks, planning to wait for an opportunity to move. However, the arrival of the god-destroying tribulation completely shattered all his plans. The rocks shook, the earth shook, and the mountains shook. The thick fog on his body had already covered more than half of his body. However, the power of this god-destroying tribulation was too strong. It was already difficult for him to avoid these aftershock attacks, let alone other things. If this continued, he was afraid that he would really die here silently. Mo Yun was unwilling in his heart. The totem between his brows suddenly became even brighter. The thick color of blood filled his eyes. A smell of a corpse suddenly emitted from his body. His eyes also gradually became ice-cold and bloodthirsty. However, right at this time, a golden flame suddenly flew over. Mo Yun suddenly realized something and raised his head to look. That ball of golden flame already flew in front of him. Just as he was planning to dodge, that flame actually directly exploded in front of him. Boom! For a moment sparks scattered. In a blink of an eye, it completely wrapped Mo Yun. Just as he was about to struggle and escape, a thick blackness suddenly gushed out from that golden flame. The cold and ruthless aura immediately made Mo Yun open his eyes wide in shock. This was swish. Without waiting for him to open his mouth, that blackness already swallowed him. Mo Yun was dead. The golden flame followed closely and spread up. From the outside, no one detected any abnormality. Very soon, the flame dissipated, and a wind blew over. It raised a handful of flying ashes. No one would have known that the once glorious Mo Yun, the deputy sect leader of Mo Sword sect, actually died silently in such a way. In fact, at this moment, no one cared about him anymore. Everyone's attention was on Chu Luiyue. Countless pairs of eyes were looking at that bright and gorgeous ball of flame in midair. Who could withstand the descent of the god-destroying tribulation? The space was still constantly collapsing. The world was dark. They were very clear that when this ball of flame dissipated, everything would be over. And Chu Luiyue, what a pity. All of us are going to be buried with her. In the Peach Blossom Cove, someone sighed dejectedly. In the crowd, Duan Qingchuan frowned, and was about to explain when he suddenly saw something and suddenly opened his eyes wide. What is that? When everyone heard that, they all subconsciously looked over. They saw that in that dazzling ball of flame, something suddenly flew out. Someone murmured with uncertainty. It seems to be a stone? Digression accumulating power. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1910. It was indeed a piece of rock. It was about the size of a fist, and was grayish-white in color. It rolled out of the brilliant flame, as if someone had accidentally thrown it out. Many people were stunned. The reason for that was because the appearance of this stone in such a situation was truly untimely. Why would such a thing appear out of nowhere? But soon, the second stone also rolled out shakily from within. At this moment, the raging power of the God-destroying tribulation had completely messed up the surrounding space. Countless crazy spatial turbulences intertwined, as if they were going to tear everything apart. However, the two stones didn't seem to be affected by the fluctuation at all. They just rolled away. At first glance, it was no different from being on flat ground. Before the crowd could react, the third rock appeared and went in another direction. At this moment, time seemed to flow extremely slowly. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the strange scene in the sky. With the ball of flame as the center, more and more rocks rolled out and scattered in all directions. Under the brilliant light, these rocks looked ordinary. Because of this, their appearance was extremely strange. These rocks rushed out of the God-destroying tribulation's power. Why aren't they broken? Someone muttered in a low voice. Many people were stunned when they heard this. That's right. When the God-destroying tribulation descended, even the mountain peaks below collapsed one after another, and were completely destroyed. Why were these small rocks not affected at all? No, aren't you curious about where these stones came from? Of course, they could not have come from the God-destroying tribulation. Then, the only explanation was Chuluiwa. These rocks must be hers. But this was even more puzzling. She was trapped in the God-destroying tribulation, and no one knew if she was dead or alive. How could she have the time to throw these rocks out? No. Look. There seems to be something coming out of those rocks. His exclamation was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples to form on the surface of the water. Everyone looked over. Soon the crowd was noisy again. It seems to be true. What's that blue thing? Hey, the one beside it is green. Why do these rocks seem to be different? With the passage of time, the originally gray, unremarkable, and even somewhat ugly stones began to glow with all sorts of colors. Although they could not be compared to the brilliant light of the God-destroying tribulation, they were still quite dazzling when scattered. The void collapsed and there were black holes everywhere. The appearance of these streams of light were like stars that lit up the darkness. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in shock. Those don't seem to be ordinary rocks. Those streams of light are God domains. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. They were actually very familiar with the words God domains. After all, those who could survive in the Peach Blossom Cove were mostly divine-level experts. When they fought with each other, they had more or less seen the God domains of other cultivators. But at this time, for them to connect these stones with the divine realm was still far beyond their imagination. God domain? How is that? Only deity-rank powerhouses could condense a deity domain. No matter how powerful these stones were, they were also dead objects. How could he display his divine domain? Could it be that you were too scared and made a mistake? There were different opinions. However, everyone obviously did not believe this. It was not that they had any opinions about the person who said this, but the matter itself was very ridiculous in their eyes. Therefore, they instinctively chose to refute. No. Look carefully. That really looks like a God domain. Why would I lie to you at this time? Seeing that everyone did not believe him, the person was a little anxious. He raised his finger and pointed at the rocks that were scattered in the sky. Look for yourselves. If those streams of light are not God domains, what are they? Under his repeated pleading, some people raised their heads to look at him in disbelief. At this time, those rocks were basically surrounded by various streams of light. Looking from below, balls of light were flickering. The light was not dazzling, but it seemed to be wrapped in a vast aura. Some people's expressions changed. This aura, It was indeed a god domain. It really seems to be. Those who had objected solemnly just now were stunned and stammered. The noisy crowd quickly quieted down. This was because the impact of this matter was too great for them. After a while, someone muttered in a low voice, "How is this possible? Am I too inexperienced? Is there really a god domain in this world without cultivators? No, it's not your problem. I'm afraid that in the entire divine ruins, there has never been such a situation. It seems that Peach Blossom Dock is really finished. A high god expert summoned a god-destroying tribulation, and the broken rocks have god domains. This is crazy. This is crazy." Too many unbelievable things had happened. So much so that people began to doubt whether everything in front of them was real, or just an illusion. However, while most people were shocked and lost, there were still a few people who maintained their last bit of rationality. A somewhat childish voice suddenly came from the crowd. "Daddy, these rocks are scattered like this like. The person who spoke was a little girl who was about 7 or 8 years old. She looked up with a sincere expression, but there was a trace of doubt in her eyes. She felt that this scene was somewhat familiar, but she could not recall it. When Duan Qingchuan, who was standing not far away, heard this, a white light suddenly flashed in his mind. Xian formation. After his reminder, the little girl finally revealed a look of realization. Yes, it is like a Xian formation. Daddy, look, it is very similar to the Xian formations you showed me before. At the age of 7 or 8, she had already started cultivating, but she still maintained the most honest view of everything. When she saw the scattered rocks in the sky, she felt that they were very familiar. However, the middle-aged man who was being pulled by her did not have the heart to care about this. He just treated it as his child's babbling. Those rocks had already displayed god domains, which was strange enough, and now she was saying that they had constructed a Xian formation. It was obvious that it was impossible. He did not say anything, but he held his daughter in his arms with heartache. His poor child was still so young, and this time, however, Duan Qingchuan stared at the sky and said word by word, "It is not like a Xian formation. It is a Xian formation." Every word was sonorous and forceful. Many people, including the middle-aged man, subconsciously raised their heads to look at the sky. In the sky, countless rocks were scattered around the ball of light of the god-destroying tribulation. At first glance, it was a mess. However, if one observed carefully, they would find that there was indeed some kind of pattern in the arrangement of these rocks. The horizontal and vertical lines intertwined with each other, but they were perfectly integrated. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.